Chapter 2296. Chang Wanzhou also walked out. I'll go too. Sun Yi shook his head. No need. The god envoys of the Illusion God Palace should be heading to the lightning pool. It would be troublesome if too many people went. There's nothing to see here. Since it involved several god envoys, it would definitely cause a huge commotion. If they went forward now, they would be implicated if they weren't careful. Chang Wanzhou's exquisite face showed a hint of hesitation, but it quickly dissipated as he nodded. Okay. Little Hachi was very curious. Why did all of them come out one by one? But seeing Sun Yi's expression, it seemed that this matter wasn't small, so she didn't insist and decided to wait here. Thinking of this, she glanced at Rong Xiu's room and whispered, "It's strange. Since everyone is going, why didn't His Highness Saint come out?" Yan Qing paused. Master has been in seclusion recently. Seclusion? Little Hachi blinked. This was strange. In her impression, Rong Xiu had always been leisurely and leisurely. It was rare to see him in seclusion. But this was the Illusion God Palace, and the competition from all sides had increased. Especially since Master was in the limelight recently. It was normal for His Highness Saint to want to raise his cultivation as soon as possible. Thinking of this, Little Hachi relaxed and sat down. Big brother, go and come back early. She wasn't worried at all about whether Sun Yi could deal with the situation over there. Sun Yi nodded lightly and left. Lightning pool. The people standing on the shore fell into a long and torturous wait. At this time, every minute and every second seemed to be elongated. What was that sound just now? Is the second god envoy summoning the other god envoys? What the hell is going on? Why would there be such a huge commotion? If even the second god envoy can't deal with it, I'm afraid. There were different opinions. Many people felt a little worried. In the Illusion God Palace, the god envoys had noble statuses and were a symbol of strength. This was especially true for the second oracle. In recent years, the first messenger rarely showed himself. Most of the important matters were left to the second messenger. This time, he had personally made an appearance, yet it was still not enough? Aren't you curious? For such a terrifying flame to suddenly surge out from the lightning pool, it was clearly suppressing the crimson gold heavenly phoenix, right? Besides, to be able to cause such a big commotion, it's definitely not an ordinary crimson gold celestial phoenix. But isn't the Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix clan a sinful clan of the Illusion God Palace? They haven't appeared for tens of thousands of years, right? Why would it suddenly erupt at this time? Who knows? However, if this conjecture was true, then I was even more curious. Who exactly was being suppressed down there? Oh, right. Do you remember the rumor that Shangguan Yu had two contracted mythological beasts? One of them was the young master of the Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix clan. I saw her rushing in just now. Could it be related to her? As soon as this guess was made, it immediately attracted the attention of many people. Someone raised his voice and asked, Song Qing, you guys came up together. Is this the situation? Many people looked at Song Qing with different expressions. Song Qing frowned and didn't say anything. His gaze fell on Mitsui. Why would they ask him about this kind of thing? As Chu Liuyue's subordinate, Mitsui should know better, right? Of course, he also knew that these people didn't ask Mitsui mainly because they were afraid of him. Ever since the lightning pool exploded, the freakish strength he displayed was truly shocking. Everyone knew that this person was not to be offended. Mitsui pretended not to see it. He clenched the lightning hammer in his hand and focused on the front. His ears twitched slightly. A rustling sound seemed to be faintly discernible in his ears. As time passed, the sound became clearer and clearer. Dong dong, dong dong. This was the sound of the Tianlei that was locked in the endless reef under the lightning pool. It was constantly attacking and trying to break out. At this time, the blazing flames that filled the sky were flowing at a much slower speed than before. However, the pressure from it didn't weaken at all. I wonder what's going on down there. Mitsui held his breath. Swoosh, swoosh. Two figures arrived one after another. Everyone looked up. They were Jingyun Lai and Shu Jing. The divine envoys usually had their own things to do. Jin Yunlai and Xu Jing were in charge of the Star Path and Herb Mountain respectively, so they had the most freedom in terms of time and naturally came the fastest. Seeing the scene in front of them, the two of them were shocked even though they were prepared. The golden flames kept surging wildly and almost completely overturned half of the lightning pool. The dark sky was also illuminated by the flames. Between heaven and earth, there was chaos. Yi Zhao self-immolated? Jin Yunlai couldn't help but murmur in shock. Xu Jing hesitated for a moment, then quickly made up her mind and rushed toward the lightning pool. Jin Yunlai was about to call out to her, but she saw that her figure was already far away. She had no choice but to immediately follow. But the two of them rushed into the lightning pool. Seeing this scene, everyone was even more worried. For so many years, the Illusion God Palace has never had such a big trouble. It actually alarmed several divine envoys at the same time. Let's retreat a little more. The fire is almost burning to the shore. I wonder what's going on down there. Mitsui was a little restless. However, just as he was about to move, a familiar fluctuation came from behind him. He subconsciously turned around and looked with a face full of surprise. Big brother? Xin Yi's arrival didn't attract too much attention. After all, at this time, everyone's attention was on the divine envoys and the lightning pool. Xin Yi's gaze swept past him and finally landed on the letter at his waist. Watch it. He raised his chin and said calmly. Mitsui lowered his head and saw that the words in the letter had unknowingly become thicker and clearer than before, as if they would burst out at any time. His heart thumped rapidly, and his large, rough hand brushed over it. Only then did the faint fluctuation calm down, and the words on it returned to their original state. Thank you, big brother. As Mitsui spoke, he saw Xin Yi step forward and hurriedly asked, Big brother, are you going to the lightning pool too? I'll go with you. Xin Yi glanced at him. You can just stay here. Mitsui scratched his head regretfully. All right. I'll wait here for Master and Big Brother to return. Xin Yi grunted, and his figure flashed, quickly disappearing into the lightning pool. The lightning pool had already fallen into complete chaos. Before Jin Yunlai and Xu Jing completely arrived, they were already restrained by the crazily surging Tianlei around them, and their speed clearly slowed down. Yu Qian raised his eyes and glanced over. Then he raised his wrist. The seal instantly stirred up a wave, scattering the Tianlei. Only then were the two of them able to escape. Almost at the same time, a figure arrived behind the two of them. Taking advantage of Yu Qian's strength, he successfully avoided the entanglement of the Tianlei. Yu Qian frowned. This aura was extremely unfamiliar. Who was so presumptuous to come down at this time? He impatiently glanced at the person who came, and then his pupils constricted. Chapter 2297. This figure, this temperament, it was clearly very similar to. He opened his mouth and was about to call for someone. But before he could finish speaking, he saw the person's appearance clearly. Handsome features with an indifferent expression, but it was a completely unfamiliar face. The rest of Yu Qian's words were stuck in his throat. His eyes were like an eagle's as he stared at the person with incomparably sharp eyes. It was a young man who looked to be about 28 or 29 years old. He was dressed in a green robe and had a thin and tall figure. His long and narrow eyes were indifferent and calm. As if sensing his gaze, that person looked over. Their gazes met. In just a moment, the other party took the lead to look away and to the side. An extremely strange feeling suddenly surged in Yu Qian's heart. This person, second oracle. Jin Yunlai and Xu Jing arrived in front of Yu Qian and saw that his expression was a little strange. The two looked at each other, then turned back to look. Xu Jing was also shocked. This is, after taking a closer look, her wildly beating heart finally calmed down. But the deep fear that would involuntarily arise when she thought of a certain person lingered in her heart for a long time before it gradually dissipated. Xin Yi, why are you here? Jin Yunlai's brows furrowed slightly. Just now, she and Xu Jing didn't notice that there was someone following behind them. Yu Qian and Xu Jing both looked at Jin Yunlai. Yunlai, you know him? Yu Qian slowly asked in a deep voice. Jin Yunlai nodded. Of course, she knew why Yu Qian asked this. This Zhen Yi was indeed somewhat similar to that person. When she first saw Zhen Yi, she was also very surprised. He's Shengguan Yu's subordinate and has been here for a while. It's just that he doesn't seem to have come out. The others in the illusory god palace might not know him, let alone the oracles. Only then did Yu Qian relax and nod. So he was here for her. He glanced at Zhen Yi again before retracting his gaze. It was just her eminence, so there was nothing to worry about. You two go over there and prepare to use the soul-locking seal. Hearing this, the two of them were shocked. Soul-lock seal? This was a special seal that required several divine envoys to work together in order to cast it. Under normal circumstances, they would never use it. Is this because of Yi Zhao? He looked up and saw that not far away, the golden Tianlei was still flowing around, stirring up the surrounding Tianlei and devouring it. As for the reddish gold flames inside, they burned even more fiercely. Tianlei shouldn't be the fourth oracle. Jin Yunlai was halfway through her words when she saw Mu Dongyu's ugly expression. She stopped abruptly. There's not much time left. Let's end this quickly. Yu Qian's voice was cold. Jin Yunlai and Xu Jing were both shocked. Yes. As soon as he finished speaking, the two of them dispersed. At this moment, they were all standing around the ball of fire, facing each other, forming a rhombus. Suddenly, Xu Jing frowned. In front of her, a figure was faintly discernible in the dazzling light. There's someone else in there? She was so shocked that she lost her voice. Even she felt very uncomfortable standing there and almost couldn't get any closer. How could someone directly enter that place? Moreover, that figure looked somewhat familiar. Ignore her, Yu Qian said coldly. If it weren't for Chu Luiyue, they might have solved the problem by now. She's just digging her own grave. Anyway, she had already broken the contract with Dumpling. It didn't matter whether she was alive or dead. Xu Jing took a deep breath. It's actually her. However, Yu Qian was right. Under such circumstances, doing this was tantamount to courting death. She was originally dissatisfied with her, but she didn't expect the opportunity to vent her anger so quickly. She retracted her gaze, and a stream of divine power flew out of her hand. Almost at the same time, Mu Dongyu and Jin Yunlai also made a move. Several streams of divine power intertwined with each other and quickly condensed into a special pattern. A terrifying pressure gradually spread out from the inside. Dumpling poured another cluster of flames into Yi Gong's body. At this moment, his body was already covered in wounds and bloodstains. Some of the wounds were so deep that bones could be seen. He lowered his head, and blood kept flowing out of the corner of his mouth. Although the aura around him was much stronger than before, his mind had already reached its limit. Yi Gong's mind was dizzy. The so-called living hell. He finally experienced it today. If he had the slightest room to resist, he wouldn't have let himself fall into such a situation. Tuanzi looked him up and down and finally nodded with satisfaction. Done. Yi Gong's eyebrows twitched. Done? What was done? He had a bad feeling, but at this moment, he didn't even have the strength to raise his head and open his eyes. Then, he felt that Dumpling seemed to have moved. She came to the middle of Yi Gong and Yi Zhao. Grandpa Patriarch, don't worry. I'll bring you out now. Yi Zhao originally didn't realize what Dumpling was planning to do, but later on, when he saw Dumpling continuously pouring those flames into Yi Gong's body, he vaguely guessed something. Now that he heard her say that, as expected, his expression changed, and a trace of hesitation flashed across his face. Dumpling, this is too dangerous for you. Moreover, you can't open these chains. When he sensed that Dumpling had opened her seventh meridian, he set himself on fire just to summon her over and give her some instructions. At the same time, he could also take care of Yi Gong. He didn't expect her to have such thoughts. Dumpling gritted her teeth and glared at the chains. These were exactly the same as the black chains that trapped her back then. At that time, she couldn't do anything about these things, but it didn't mean that she couldn't do anything now. She took a step forward and grabbed the black chains tightly. Then, she shook it fiercely. Rumble. A loud sound suddenly came from the depths of the lightning pool. This time, it instantly set off a stormy sea. Chapter 2298. This power spread out instantly, causing Yu Qian and the others to almost lose their balance. The soul-locking seal that they were about to use also swayed and could not be stabilized. Hearing the sound of the chains, Yu Qian's expression turned even darker. Were they planning to bring Yi Zhao out? TSK, they were just dreaming. The chains were extremely tough. Even though Dumpling had opened her 7th meridian, she could not break them. A beam of light surged out of his palm as he continued to condense the soul-locking seal. The chains shook violently. The black mist on them surged, but there were no signs of them breaking. Dumpling frowned deeply. This thing was really troublesome. Dumpling, don't waste your time. I have a few words to say to you. Yi Zhao was almost at his limit. His voice was extremely weak. Tuanzi's eyes suddenly turned red, and her grape-like big eyes were instantly filled with tears. Grandpa Clan Leader, I will definitely save you. She had finally opened her 7th meridian and came here. How could she miss such a rare opportunity? Yi Zhao's cracked lips curled up slightly. However, because his body was exhausted, it was very strenuous. Dark red blood seeped out of it. Dumpling Clan's wasn't a traitor of the illusory god palace. He opened his mouth with difficulty. Every time he spat out a word, it felt like something was scraping his throat. It was painful. Dumpling held back her tears, but her voice was choked with sobs. Grandpa Clan Leader, Dumpling, don't listen. It's the same if you give it to me after you get out. As she spoke, a cluster of golden flames burned on her small hand. Bang! She struck the chains with her palm. There was a muffled sound. However, the chains still did not break. Not even a mark was left. Dumpling held her breath and struck again. Intense pain came from her hand, but it was not even a millionth of the anxiety in her heart. Why couldn't it open? Why couldn't it open? Chu Luiyue stood outside the giant net of golden Tianlei. She could not see the situation inside through the brilliant light of the Tianlei and flames. However, she and Dumpling were telepathic and naturally knew what the situation was. Chu Luiyue's brows were tightly knitted. She knew how difficult it was to deal with the black chains. Now, Dumpling's strength alone was probably not enough. At this moment, a strange fluctuation suddenly came from the interspatial ring. Chu Luiyue was dazed as she saw a purple light flash across her eyes. That piece of purple scale armor suddenly appeared. Her heart suddenly she reached out to grab on it. This was something that belonged to Daoist. Once it was exposed, swoosh! Without any hesitation, the purple scales charged towards the ball of fire. Chu Luiyue's to her heart instantly to her throat. However, in the next moment, the scene that happened in front of her caused her eyes to flash with a deep shock. That piece of purple scale armor actually pierced through the defensive barrier formed by the golden heavenly lightning and quickly sank into the reddish gold flames. The Tianlei did not dodge in time and was cut in half from the middle. After a short silence, the golden Tianlei exploded with a bang and turned into countless streaks of light, scattering in all directions. Chu Luiyue sucked in a cold breath. What was the origin of the scale armor left by Daoist? How could it be so sharp and terrifying? At the same time, Dumpling, who was in the center of the flames, also heard the sound. She stopped and looked back. A purple scale armor flashed in front of her eyes. The strong wind blew the golden bell on her head. The music was crisp. Then she heard a very subtle cutting sound. She looked in the direction of the sound. She saw that the black chain that was tightly wrapped around Yi Zhao was easily cut in half by the scale armor. Dumpling did not even think and immediately waved the ancestor's golden feather in her hand. A flame flew out and grabbed Yi Zhao's wrist. Then, it quickly pulled him out of the flame. A strange scene appeared. The black chains that had been broken apart were quickly reconnecting with each other. Black fog surrounded them. Dumpling could clearly see that the broken chain was beginning to repair itself. She waved her wrist again. Yi Gong's body flew over uncontrollably. At the same time, a ball of flame suddenly burned on his body. It was the flame that belonged to Yizhao that Dumpling had collected previously. At this moment, the flame wrapped around him, causing his aura to be no different from Yizhao's. Whoosh, sensing this aura, the black chain flew over quickly and wrapped around Yi Gong tightly. Dumpling calmed down and looked at Yizhao. Grandpa clan leader. Let's go now. Yizhao came back to his senses. If he left like this, he would not be able to conceal his aura and would be exposed sooner or later. He did not care about himself, but the key was that he could not implicate Dumpling. His expression was firm. Dumpling's step back. Dumpling was stunned, but still obediently took a few steps back. Grandpa clan leader, you want to, boom. Before she could finish, Yizhao's body suddenly burst into flames. Dumpling's eyes widened. Before she could say anything, she felt a fierce heat wave coming from the front. Her body flew back uncontrollably. An extremely dense flame wrapped around Yizhao's translucent soul and quickly flew into the ancestor's golden feather in her hand. At the same time, Yi Gong's body was instantly engulfed and burned. Chu Luiwei sensed that something was wrong. Just as she was about to move, she saw Dumpling's figure flying towards her. She hurriedly went forward and hugged Dumpling. The scorching heat wave tore through the cage formed by the golden Tianlei and attacked in all directions. Seeing this, Chu Luiwei turned around without hesitation and protected Dumpling firmly. However, the expected burning pain did not come. A familiar voice sounded in front of her. Master! Chu Luiwei looked up. Sin Yi! She had placed all her attention on Dumpling and did not know that Sin Yi was here too. Master, this place is dangerous. We should leave as soon as possible. Sin Yi said calmly. Chu Luiwei suddenly realized something and turned back. A transparent barrier had appeared behind her at some point, isolating her from the surging power. This was Sin Yi's doing. This thing can't last for long. Sin Yi said. Chu Luiwei immediately nodded. Let's go. With a thought, she threw out the flowing cloud flying diagram and stepped into it. Sin Yi turned back to take a look. The golden cage had been completely torn apart. Countless golden flames erupted like magma and surged in all directions. The soul-locking seal that Yu Qian and the others hadn't had the time to use was instantly dispersed, and they were forced to retreat in a sorry state by the impact of this force. He calmly retracted his gaze and followed. Chapter 2299. The huge commotion that erupted within the lightning pool caused everyone, who was watching from the periphery, to be stunned. The tyrannical Tianlei power swept in all directions as if it had gone crazy. Huge waves surged into the sky. Even the ground beneath their feet began to tremble violently. Retreat! Someone shouted, and everyone immediately retreated in a hurry. But Shijing did not move. Instead, he frowned. How did it end up like this? He stomped his foot. Those Tianlei that were about to charge over had silently reduced their speed. By the time they reached his feet, they had almost no attack power. If someone was paying attention, they would definitely notice that something was wrong. But now, everyone's attention was focused in the distance. How could they care about Shijing? Moreover, the edge of the lightning pool was extremely long. His small spot was not conspicuous at all. Therefore, not a single person noticed the abnormality on Shijing's side. At this moment, a stream of light suddenly flashed in the sky above the lightning pool. Then, two figures walked out, one in front and one behind. It was Chu Luiwei and Sin Yi. Swoosh! Chu Luiwei put away the flowing cloud-flying diagram and heaved a sigh of relief. Dumpling hugged her neck tightly. She was still holding the ancestor's golden feather in her hand. Chu Luiwei looked down. The huge lightning pool had completely fallen into chaos. Countless Tianlei were flowing in all directions. There were even several streaks of golden light mixed in. Those were the scattered golden Tianlei. At the same time, red gold flames burned fiercely. Looking down from above, this place had completely turned into a sea of fire. Then a few figures rushed out. It was Yu Qian and the others. They floated in the air and attacked together. Clearly, they planned to continue suppressing the lightning pool. In this situation, they had no choice but to do so. Chu Luiyue looked at Dumpling in her arms. Dumpling was leaning on her shoulder. She did not make a sound. The tip of her sharp nose was red. Chu Luiyue's heart ached as she kissed her forehead. Dumpling, be good. Let's go back. Dumpling's heart ached. The tears that she had been holding back for a long time finally fell. Big drops of tears, sparkling and translucent, fell down like pearls from a broken necklace. Chu Luiyue's clothes were quickly wet. She held the ancestor's golden feather tightly and buried her head in Chu Luiyue's shoulder. She whimpered softly. Okay. Chu Luiyue brought Dumpling back to Phoenix Cry. Sun Yi did not follow. Instead, he came to Mitsui's side and raised his chin at him. It's time to go. Shijing went and asked worriedly. Are Master and Tuanzi all right? Sun Yi shook his head. Everything is going. As for the lightning pool, it would probably take a long time for it to recover after this storm. Shijing's heart. Thank you, big brother. I got it. After Sun Yi finished speaking, he looked into the distance. The figures of Yu Qian and the others seemed especially small in the sea of fire. He narrowed his eyes. After a moment, he turned and left. Chu Luiyue originally wanted to bring Dumpling back to her residence, but after thinking about it, she decided to return to Phoenix Cry Mountain. On one hand, on the surface, she no longer had anything to do with Dumpling. If she brought her back just like that, it was very likely to cause some trouble. On the other hand, Phoenix Cry Mountain was the place where the crimson gold celestial phoenix ancestor used to live. It was quiet and safe. When they came here, Tuanzi's small body was still crying and twitching. Chu Luiyue sighed softly in her heart. Actually, she had already successfully swapped Yizhao and Yigong. She only needed to escape. But Yizhao still chose to do so. There was only one reason. He wanted to completely ensure Dumpling's safety. Even though their auras had been swapped, there were still all kinds of hidden dangers. Yizhao destroyed his own body and hid in the ancestor's golden feather. He also took the opportunity to destroy Yigong's body, causing his soul to be trapped in the depths of the lightning pool forever. This way, even if anyone had suspicions and investigated, they wouldn't be able to find anything. Because Yigong had already opened his 7th meridian, and he was using Yizhao's aura and power. These were enough to completely cover Yigong's bloodline aura. Moreover, after suffering such a terrifying impact, Yigong was almost dead. This secret would be buried forever. Chu Luiyue didn't say anything. She only hugged Dumpling and patted her back gently. Dumpling liked to cry often. But she rarely saw her like this. She didn't say a word and only kept crying. She must be extremely sad to be like this. Chu Luiyue's heart also felt like it was being kneaded into a ball by something. It was extremely uncomfortable and stifling. A gentle breeze blew. It was quiet all around. Even the scorching hot aura on Fengming Mountain had become much gentler. After an unknown period of time, Dumpling's tears finally stopped. She raised her head and looked at Chu Luiyue. Her eyes were red and swollen from crying. Sparkling tears still hung on her thick and long eyelashes. Ayu. She spoke with a hoarse voice. Isn't Dumpling too useless? Chu Luiyue was stunned. Why do you ask? Dumpling was silent for a long time before continuing. If I'm powerful enough, I won't. What happened today wouldn't have happened. Chu Luiyue shook her head and gently wiped away the tears at the corner of her eyes. Dumpling, you've already done very well. To be able to open the 7th meridian in such a short period of time, Dumpling was probably the only one in the Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix clan who could do it. Although Yizhao's body was damaged, he still managed to escape successfully and save his life. This was already the best result so far. In the future, if there was a chance in the future, it might not be impossible to help Yizhao reconstruct his body. Dumpling nodded and whispered into Chu Luiyue's ear, Grandpa clan leader is asleep. Chu Luiyue was startled at first, but then he understood. It must be because Yizhao was too crazy previously that he fell into a coma. However, if he stayed in the ancestor's golden feather for a period of time, he might be much better. After Dumpling finished crying, her emotions finally calmed down. Since things had already come to this, she could only choose to accept it. When she continued to open her meridians in the future, she would be able to save Grandpa Clan leader. But Dumpling suddenly remembered something. She frowned and looked at Chu Luiyue. Grandpa Clan leader mentioned Ancestor before. He said that Ancestor didn't betray the palace of the illusory god back then. Chu Luiyue's heart skipped a beat. And then? And then that's it. Dumpling shook her head. Grandpa Clan leader didn't have time to finish. At that time, she was focused on saving him and didn't listen carefully. Now that she thought about it, she realized that this should be an extremely important matter. After all, it was related to Ancestor. Chu Luiyue frowned slightly. There was indeed something fishy about what happened back then. If Yiling didn't choose to betray back then, why would there be so many rumors later? She looked up at the palace of the illusory god not far away. Who was the current master of the palace of the illusory god? Chapter 2300. Yu Qian and the rest of the divine envoys worked together to quell the lightning pool's riot. It took them 3 days and 3 nights to calm everything down. The huge soul lock seal floated quietly, sealing the entire lightning pool. Countless Tianlei swam under it. From afar, it looked like a thick layer of ice had frozen on the surface of the sea, suppressing everything. A faint glow flickered on the soul lock seal, cold and dazzling. Yu Qian's face was cold as he stared at the soul lock seal for a long time. The others beside him were also silent. The air seemed to have frozen. Although they had temporarily calmed it down with the soul lock seal, the lightning pool would remain in its current state for a long time. This was something that had never happened in the past 10,000 years. Even when Yi Zhao was imprisoned here, there hadn't been such a big commotion. After a long time, Yu Qian looked at Mu Dongyu and asked in a deep voice, "Now, how much control do you have over the Tianlei power in the lightning pool?" Mu Dongyu hesitated for a moment and said, "Half." This was already improving. When he was at his breaking point, he almost lost control of the entire lightning pool. It wasn't until the soul lock seal suppressed it that he gradually regained control of the Tianlei. However, this didn't make Mu Dongyu's mood better. He was the 4th divine envoy. From the day he ascended to this position, he was responsible for guarding the lightning pool. It had been 10,000 years. However, when the lightning pool rebelled, he couldn't help at all. He was even trapped inside and almost lost his life. No one would believe this if word got out. As expected, Yu Qian's face turned colder. "All these years, is this how you guard the lightning pool?" Mu Dongyu's heart skipped a beat. He immediately bowed his head and admitted his guilt. "Dongyu has failed in his duty. Please punish me, 2nd divine envoy. You didn't fail in your duty. You were incompetent." Yu Qian sneered and said mercilessly. Mu Dongyu choked and his face turned pale, but he couldn't think of any rebuttal. He couldn't refute this point. He had to admit it even if he didn't want to. Jin Yunlai suddenly said, "2nd divine envoy, the main reason for the lightning pool's sudden outburst was Yi Zhao. Fortunately, he managed to keep his life. Without a physical body, what's the use of a soul?" Yu Qian raised his voice, his expression cold. Jin Yunlai shut her mouth. Yu Qian closed his eyes and took a deep breath, trying his best to suppress the anger in his heart. Now was not the time to punish Mu Dongyu. Besides, if he was deposed, no one would be able to replace him in a short time. Unlike Xu Jing, Mu Dongyu was very important to the Thunder Pool and was basically irreplaceable. This was because the divine body he cultivated was very special. It could withstand more Tianlei power than the others. Ordinary people couldn't even get close to the depths of the Thunder Pool, but Mu Dongyu could stay here all year round. Therefore, even if Yu Qian was furious, he couldn't just replace Mu Dongyu. Xu Jing's eyes flickered as she said softly, "2nd divine envoy, Yi Zhao did this because he knew that Yi Gong had betrayed the clan and was furious. That was why he killed him at all costs. Now, he has achieved his goal, but he has also fallen into a coma. Fortunately, the most important one should be fine for the time being." She was talking about Dumpling. Thinking of Dumpling, Yu Qian's expression improved a little. That's right. Yi Gong's soul was destroyed, and Yi Zhao had also fallen into a coma. Fortunately, Dumpling wasn't affected too much. "Has Shangguan Yu brought her back?" he asked in a low voice. Shu Jing nodded. She left as soon as the incident happened. She ran really fast. He thought that she would definitely die here this time, but who knew? Shu Jing lowered her eyes to hide the emotions in her eyes. Dumpling now had a very high status in the second divine envoy's heart. She knew very well that no matter what, she couldn't touch this red line. "You're quite smart," Yu Qian said, but no emotion could be heard in his voice. However, it was obvious that Yu Qian was quite certain that Chu Luiyue had risked her life to save Dumpling. After all, Dumpling had just opened her 7th meridian. If anything happened to her now, Yu Qian would really vomit blood. Shu Jing felt a little uncomfortable. She smiled and said, "I heard that she has already broken the contract with Dumpling. I didn't expect her to still be so concerned." No wonder the second divine envoy allowed her to enter Fengming Mountain as she pleased. Yu Qian glanced at her coldly. "Shu Jing, are you unhappy?" Shu Jing hurriedly lowered her head. "Shu Jing doesn't dare. I know you don't like Shangguanyu." Yu Qian stared at her indifferently. "I have to say that your right to manage the herb mountain has been taken back because of her. However, this is ultimately your problem. I only want to warn you one thing. Don't touch her. No matter what, she is the person Dumpling values the most. If anything happens to her, no one can guarantee what Dumpling will do. So, keep your hands and feet clean. Don't touch Fengming Mountain, understand?" The last sentence was a blatant threat. Shu Jing's heart trembled. She could no longer maintain the expression on her face. "Yes, Shu Jing understands." Yu Qian looked at Mu Dongyu. "I will transfer the 9th and 10th divine envoys over later. From today onwards, the 3 of you will take turns guarding this lightning pool. If you find anything unusual, report it immediately." "Yes." After giving these instructions, Mu Dongyu quickly left. Only then did the atmosphere loosen up a little. Jin Yunlai said, "Since the second divine envoy has already made arrangements, I will take my leave first." Mu Dongyu nodded. Then, she suddenly thought of something and called out to him, "Wait." Jin Yunlai turned around. "Fourth divine envoy, is there anything else?" Mu Dongyu hesitated for a moment before asking, "Do you know much about that, Sin Yi?" "Fourth divine envoy, what do you mean by that?" Jin Yunlai was a little surprised. She didn't expect him to suddenly mention Sin Yi. Mu Dongyu said, "I saw him attack just now. He seems to be quite powerful." Even though the situation was very chaotic back then, he still saw Sin Yi take action and help Chu Luiyue block the attack. Jin Yunlai nodded. "In fact, it's not just Sin Yi. The subordinates that Shangguanyu brought over are also considered to be talented and powerful. It's just that they don't have bloodline totems." It was also because of this that he didn't take these people to heart. Mu Dongyu nodded. "I remember now. Shangguanyu and Shu Jing are also like this. Since they didn't have bloodline totems, there was no hope for them to become gods in the future." He waved his hand. "Forget it." In the dark and cramped cage, Dugumabao sat quietly. It was so quiet that one could hear a pin drop. After a moment, a hoarse voice sounded. "You can't even protect yourself, and you still want to save Yi Zhao?" Dugumabao opened his eyes. His purple eyes were clear and deep. "He is Yi Ling's descendant. I have to protect him." Chapter 2301. The man chuckled. "Yi Ling has been dead for tens of thousands of years. What's the point of bringing him up? Besides, didn't you fail to protect him back then? Why do you have to do something so useless now?" Dugumabao clenched his fists on his knees and clenched his jaw. There seemed to be a layer of frost between his eyebrows. After a long while, he said, "In comparison, what you've done is useless, isn't it? Do you think the palace of the illusory god can be lit with the blood of the Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix clan? If it's not yours, you shouldn't have dreamed about it from the start." The voice fell silent. After a long while, it said, "You'll know whether it's mine or not." The atmosphere in the palace of the illusory god had been very unusual recently. Nan Jinshu paced back and forth in his room with a conflicted expression. He had been in the palace of the illusory god for a long time, but except for the seventh divine envoy at the heaven gate, he hadn't seen any other divine envoys. Moreover, even the seventh divine emissary had only told him to stay here and cultivate properly, and had never come again. Nan Jinshu was a little anxious. He felt that his efficiency was a little slow. If he didn't think of a way, it would be extremely difficult for him to become a god. After hesitating for a long time, Nan Jinshu finally made up his mind and walked out of the door. Just as he reached the entrance of the courtyard, he saw a familiar figure. Jun Jiuqing? Jun Jiuqing turned his head and looked over when he heard the voice. Nan Jinshu quickly walked forward, but changed the way he addressed him. Head of Family E, where are you going? Jun Jiuqing's lips curled into a devilish smile. What else can I do in the palace of the illusory god? Nan Jinshu didn't know how to respond. He paused for a moment before continuing. Head of Family E, have you seen the first divine envoy during this time? Jun Jiuqing shook his head and narrowed his eyes. I heard that the first divine envoy has been in seclusion for many years and hasn't come out for a long time. Even the other divine envoys have been rejected. What's the matter? Does the head of the Nan family want to see the first divine envoy? Nan Jinshu nodded. He felt a little troubled after hearing Jun Jiuqing's words. If that's the case, then it will be very difficult to meet the first divine envoy. Currently, many of the affairs of the illusory god palace have been handed over to the second divine envoy. If the patriarch of the Nan family has any questions, you can ask the second divine envoy. Why do you have to see the first divine envoy? Nan Jinshu hesitated. He looked around to make sure that there was no one around before he took a step forward and lowered his voice. To tell you the truth, Family E, I want to go to the illusionary god C. Jun Jiuqing's expression changed slightly as a cold glint flashed across his eyes. Oh. Nan Jinshu didn't want to talk too much with Jun Jiuqing. After all, the relationship between the two families had changed after the incident at Peach Blossom Dock. However, he and Jun Jiuqing were both latecomers and had little to do with what had happened before. Besides, the heaven gate of the illusory god palace had been opened and the two of them had entered the palace of the illusory god, so they should work together. After thinking about it, Nan Jinshu told Jun Jiuqing his thoughts. I wanted to go to the Thunder Pool to cultivate and improve my cultivation, but now that the Thunder Pool has been sealed and I don't know when it will be opened again, I don't think I can count on it. So, I thought that maybe going to the illusionary god C is a good choice. However, the illusionary god C has always been under the control of the first divine envoy. If I want to go there, I have to get the first divine envoy's permission, so... Jun Jiuqing raised his eyebrows and said with a faint smile, Family E, don't be afraid. The illusionary god C is not an ordinary place. It's unimaginably dangerous. Are you sure you want to go? Nan Jinshu also smiled with a meaningful look on his face. That's right. The illusionary god C is extremely dangerous for ordinary people, but it's different for you and me. Family E, I don't think I need to remind you of some things, right? If he wasn't prepared, he wouldn't have thought about it. Jun Jiuqing nodded. So, Family Head Nan has made up your mind? Nan Jinshu simply nodded and admitted it, then said, yes. Why don't you go with me, Family Head Nan? Jun Jiuqing's thin lips curled into a faint smile. No need. I don't have such plans for now. Nan Jinshu was stunned and his expression became a little complicated. Jun Jiuqing's talent and strength were above his. Even if he didn't use any other methods, he would definitely be able to reach the immortal level in the future. He was unwilling to accept it and was unwilling to accept it. But there was no reason for such things. Nan Jinshu suppressed his emotions and said, if that's the case, I won't disturb you. But please don't tell anyone about what happened today, Family Head Nan. Of course. Jun Jiuqing raised his hand and pointed in a certain direction. That should be the first divine envoy's courtyard. Family Head Nan can go and ask. However, the first divine envoy hasn't appeared for many years. Family Head Nan should be prepared to be rejected. Nan Jinshu smiled as if he didn't care. I know. Jun Jiuqing was about to leave, but when he heard Nan Jinshu's relaxed tone, he couldn't help but look at him again. Family head Nan, you seem very certain that the first divine envoy will let you go to the Mirage God Ocean? Nan Jinshu's eyebrows twitched and he laughed. How can I be that capable? I just want to give it a try. Family head Nan, I'll take my leave now. Jun Jiuqing didn't pursue the matter and responded with a smile. Then I wish family head Nan all the best. Nan Jinshu left quickly. Jun Jiuqing stared at his back for a while and rubbed his chin thoughtfully. He didn't have much contact with Nan Jinshu, but he knew a little about him. Nan Jinshu's talent was limited and he wasn't capable enough. If it weren't for the fact that most of the capable people in the Nan family were dead, he wouldn't have been able to become the family head. If he had to talk about his strength, it was just that he was more quick-witted than the average person and could see the right opportunity. This was also an important reason why he was able to become the family head. Nan Jinshu was usually cautious and wouldn't take action if he wasn't confident enough. This time, however, it was a little unusual. After being in the Mirage God Palace for so long, Nan Jinshu couldn't not know what was going on with the first divine envoy, but he still insisted on going. He must have some kind of trump card. Interesting, Jun Jiuqing murmured to himself. In the end, he chose to follow them silently. Nan Jinshu arrived at the first divine envoy's courtyard without a hitch. The door was shut tight, and it was cold and lonely. Those who didn't know better would think that no one had been here for many years. Nan Jinshu bowed. First divine envoy, Nan Jinshu of the Nan family requests an audience. No one answered. Nan Jinshu waited for a while, thinking that it was indeed difficult to meet this person. He took half a step forward and said, First divine envoy, I heard that the Mirage God Palace has been looking for the third zither score all these years? Chapter 2302. After Yu Qian left the lightning pool, he went straight back to Fengming Mountain. Dumpling was nestled in Chu Liyue's arms, and the two of them were whispering to each other. Sensing his movements, the two of them looked up at the same time. Dumpling immediately became alert. She jumped out of Chu Liyue's arms and blocked in front of her. Yu Qian came in front of her and first scanned Dumpling from head to toe. After confirming that she was safe and sound, he finally heaved a sigh of relief. Don't worry. I didn't plan to do anything to her today. Dumpling was skeptical. Who knows how much of what you say is true and how much of it is false? And you even locked up Grandpa clan leader. Her little face was full of anger, as if she had not recovered from the shock caused by this matter. Yu Qian was not surprised by Dumpling's reaction. She was the young mistress of the Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix clan. Seeing Yi Zhao in trouble, it was naturally difficult for her to accept. It's a long story. Yi Zhao made a mistake first. Locking him in the lightning pool was just to wake him up. Unfortunately, he was still stubborn and even did such a thing in the end. Yu Qian's usually gentle expression now had a hint of coldness added to it, causing people to shudder. I'm sure you've seen what he's done. Yi Gong's body and soul were destroyed, and the entire lightning pool was almost destroyed by him. It can only be said that he reaped what he had sown. Dumpling bit her lips and clenched her two little fists tightly. Great Elder betrayed the clan first. Grandpa clan leader wants to kill him, so it is reasonable. This is our Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix clan's matter. When is it up to you outsiders to judge? She glared at Yu Qian. Release Grandpa Patriarch right now. Yu Qian was not angry. Instead, he laughed. If you want to save him, it's very simple. In the future, as long as you stay here and cultivate properly, I guarantee that his life will not be in danger. When you open your 9th meridian, I will release him. Dumpling was shocked. Chu Liyue also frowned subconsciously. 9th meridian? In the entire Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix clan, only their ancestor, Yi Ling, had managed to do so. Yu Qian actually had such high expectations for Dumpling? Furthermore, what was his purpose for doing this? To be honest, even Yi Zhao might not urge Dumpling to open her meridians, nor would he place this heavy burden on her shoulders. However, Yu Qian, what was he so anxious about? How long do we have to wait? I think you are just trying to fool me. Dumpling gritted her teeth. How am I fooling you? Don't forget, you have the purest bloodline. Now that you have successfully opened your 7th meridian before reaching adulthood, you will definitely be able to open your 9th meridian in the future. There is no doubt about this. As for the time, that will depend on you. Yu Qian looked around. There is no place more suitable for you to cultivate than Feng Ming Mountain. With your current aptitude, why do you have to worry about not being able to open your meridians? Dumpling stared at him and did not say anything. She turned around and pounced on Chu Luwe, hugging her thigh tightly. "Ah Yu, this person is so annoying." Chu Luwe picked her up and looked at Yu Qian with a frown. "Second Divine Envoy, since you have already made up your mind, I know that no one can persuade you. Since that is the case, I hope you can keep your promise. On the day that Dumpling opens her 9th meridian, you must release clan leader Yi Zhao." Yu Qian nodded, "Of course." As soon as he finished speaking, Nanjin Shu stood quietly and patiently waited for a response. After a while, a low voice finally came from inside. "Come in." Creak. The door opened. Nanjin Shu took a deep breath and suppressed the excitement surging from the bottom of his heart. He bowed respectfully before stepping forward. After he crossed the threshold, the door closed again. Nanjin Shu's figure disappeared behind the door. Jun Jiuqing, who was not far away, stared at the door thoughtfully for a long time. The 3rd zither score. No wonder he was so confident. He thought for a while and turned to leave. At this moment, Nanjin Shu walked into the courtyard. The courtyard was filled with a thick pile of fallen leaves. It was lonely, bleak, and extremely cold. If the sound did not come from here, Nanjin Shu would have suspected that there was no one here. The courtyard was not big, and the furnishings were very simple. It was hard to imagine that the Honorable First Divine Envoy lived in such a place. Nanjin Shu looked at the tightly shut door, and his heart started to beat faster. After all, he was going to meet the First Divine Envoy. It was impossible for him not to be nervous. He adjusted his collar and made sure that there was nothing wrong with his appearance before he continued walking. However, he had just taken a step when he heard a rustling sound from the side. He was stunned and turned around instinctively. Something seemed to be moving under the thick pile of fallen leaves not far away. "Quiet." The low and indifferent voice sounded again. However, it was obviously directed at the existence under the fallen leaves. As soon as he finished speaking, the surroundings fell silent again. Nanjin Shu was confused. What was that thing under there? I don't remember hearing about the First Divine Envoy keeping anything by his side. Nanjin Shu. Nanjin Shu's heart skipped a beat when he heard the First Divine Envoy call his name. "Yes. Where is the 3rd zither score now?" The voice asked straightforwardly. Nanjin Shu was stunned for a moment. "First Divine Envoy, I think it's more convenient for me to talk inside, right? This matter was so confidential. It was weird to talk about it through the door. There's no one else here. Just say it." The voice was calm, but there was no room for refusal. Chapter 2303. After a moment of hesitation, Nanjin Shu cupped his fists and bowed. "First Divine Envoy, as far as I know, the 3rd piece of music score is still in the God-slaying mound." As soon as he finished speaking, the entire courtyard became even quieter. Nanjin Shu only felt an invisible pressure on his shoulders. It was unbearably heavy. He held his breath as nervousness gradually grew in his heart. The music score was split into 3 pieces and scattered all over the world of God. Only one piece was left in the God-slaying mound and was taken away by someone else. Now you're saying that the 3rd piece is still in the God-slaying mound? There was a questioning tone in the deep voice. Nanjin Shu hurriedly said, "First Divine Envoy, I wouldn't dare lie. The last piece is still in the God-slaying mound. Even that person doesn't know about it. I only learned about it recently when I learned that the heavenly gate had opened and Taizu's brocade pouch was opened. Before Taizu of the Nan family passed away, he left behind a brocade pouch for the family heads to keep. His last words were that it could only be opened when the heavenly gate of the illusory God Palace opened. The family heads of the Nan family, including Nanjin Shu, didn't know about it before. Otherwise, Nan Yifan would have taken action long ago. If you know about it, then Jun Jiuqing should know about it too. Why didn't he report it? Nan Jinshu looked troubled. I don't know about that. How would he know what Jun Jiuqing was thinking? Maybe he was waiting for the right time. After all, only the family heads of the Nan family and family E knew about it. From a certain perspective, this was indeed an asset that could be used in negotiations. After a while, the voice said, I already know about it. I already know about this matter. I will send people to search for him later. What do you want? Of course, he knew what Nan Jinshu was trying to achieve by coming here. Nan Jinshu's throat was dry from nervousness, but he was also excited and expectant. He paused for a moment, then said respectfully, First Divine Envoy, I would like to, please allow me to cultivate in the illusory God Ocean. After the voice fell, the room fell silent. After a while, the voice continued to ask, Are you sure? Yes. Nan Jinshu said carefully. Jinshu knows that her talent is insufficient. Based on her current standard, it is extremely difficult for her to ascend to the heavens and become a god. Therefore, he invited himself to enter the illusionary God Ocean to cultivate and improve his cultivation base. This way, the Taizu name would not be tarnished in the future. A moment later, a stream of light flew out of the house. Nan Jinshu hurriedly caught it with both hands. It was a translucent talisman seal with the word illusion drawn on it. There were several mysterious patterns around it that were intertwined. This talisman can only be used once. When you come out of the illusionary God Sea, this talisman will automatically be destroyed and can only be used by one person. You may take it. Nan Jinshu was so excited that his hands were trembling slightly. He quickly thanked him. Thank you, First Oracle. You may leave. Yes. Nan Jinshu didn't dare to disturb him. He carefully put away the talisman and left respectfully. After he left, the inside and outside of the courtyard became quiet again. Nan Jinshu walked out happily with the seal in his hand. With this thing, he could enter the illusionary God Sea to cultivate. It wouldn't take long for his strength to skyrocket. At that thought, Nan Jinshu couldn't hide the joy in his eyes. Patriarch Nan? A young woman's gentle voice rang out. Nan Jinshu stopped in his tracks and turned to look. He saw a graceful figure walking toward him from the corner. She was gentle and beautiful, with long hair that reached her ankles. You are... Nan Jinshu was a little stunned. I'm Su Li. The woman in front of him smiled faintly. Nan Jinshu was stunned for a moment. Then, a look of surprise flashed across his eyes. Mr. Su. He had never seen Su Li before. The Nan family had suffered a great loss after the battle at Peach Blossom Dock. He had been recuperating in the Nan family. Although he had heard about Tang Ku and Mr. Su, Nan Jinshu had never had the chance to meet them. After coming to the illusionary god palace, he had vaguely heard that Su Li was here. However, it was only today that he saw her with his own eyes. Nan Jinshu paused for a moment and bowed. Oh, it's Mr. Su. My apologies. He had a special status in the illusionary god palace. His status was even higher than that of Chu Luiwei and the others. However, Su Li was an artifact sage. Naturally, she was different. Therefore, Nan Jinshu was rather polite to Su Li. Su Li glanced at him and asked with a smile, What are you talking about? Patriarch Nan, what good news did you have? Why are you so happy? Actually, she had just happened to pass by. She already knew that Nan Jinshu was in the illusionary god palace. She wanted to leave immediately, but Nan Jinshu's expression was a little strange. She looked up slightly and glanced behind Nan Jinshu. Patriarch Nan, did you come from the first divine envoy side? Nan Jinshu didn't try to avoid the topic. He chuckled and nodded his head elegantly. That's right. I just met the first divine envoy. Su Li's beautiful eyes widened. She looked shocked. Really? Hasn't the first divine envoy been in seclusion for many years? She heard that the other divine envoys had tried to meet the first divine envoy several times, but they were all rejected at the door. But why did Nan Jinshu? Nan Jinshu was rather pleased with Su Li's reaction. Su Li, Mr. Su, was a powerful figure. He used to be high and mighty in the world of divine ruins. However, things were different now. So what if he was powerful? Su Li had to bow politely to the other divine envoys, but he could meet the first divine envoy directly. There was a huge difference between them. The feeling of being superior made Nen Jinshu very happy. Mr. Su, the first divine envoy, asked me to do some things. I won't stay any longer. Su Li was puzzled. What kind of things could the first divine envoy ask Nen Jinshu to do? In terms of status, the divine envoys in the illusionary god palace were at his disposal. In terms of strength, Nen Jinshu wasn't too outstanding. Why did the first divine envoy choose him? Moreover, Nen Jinshu's treatment was different from theirs from the start. He was directly sent to the illusionary god palace. Countless questions flashed through Su Li's mind, but she didn't show it on her face. She only smiled. Since it's the first divine envoy's order, I naturally can't delay it. Patriarch Nen, please. Nen Jinshu nodded and turned to leave. Su Li was taken aback. Patriarch Nan, that's the direction out of the illusionary god palace. Nen Jinshu stopped in his tracks and turned back with a smile. I'm going out of the illusionary god palace. To be honest, I'm going to the illusionary god ocean. There were very few people in the illusionary god palace who were qualified to do so. Nen Jinshu was pleased with himself, so he just said it directly. There was nothing to hide anyway. Everyone would know when he returned from the illusionary god ocean. Su Li frowned. The illusionary god ocean. Chapter 2304. Illusionary God Ocean? Chu Luiwei looked up in surprise. Nen Jinshu said it himself? Su Li nodded. That's right. He looks very happy. The excitement and pride on his face are not concealed at all. This place? I've never heard of it before. Chu Luiwei thought for a while and a guess appeared in his mind. Could it be the ocean outside the heavenly gate? That's right. I followed him out of the illusionary god palace and saw him go straight to the heavenly gate. Other than that, where else can there be an ocean in the illusionary god palace? Chu Liyue's eyebrows twitched and he immediately stood up. Su Li was shocked. Little Yu, what's wrong? Chu Liyue took a deep breath and paced around the room. He felt a little puzzled. Nothing, I just feel that this matter is a little strange. The illusionary god ocean is very dangerous. We saw it with our own eyes when we came here. Nen Jinshu is just a supreme god. How could he have the guts to go there? Su Li heard and said. He said that the first divine envoy told him something, but I also feel that it's a little strange. No one has seen the first divine envoy all these years. I heard that even the 8th and 7th divine envoys were rejected. What was it that he had to do? And I saw that he was very happy. It didn't look like he was taking a risk, but more like he was going to receive a reward. In any case, it must be a good thing for him. First divine envoy. Chu Luiwei muttered. The divine envoys of the illusionary god palace were all very respected. The first divine envoy was the most respected. It could be seen from the other divine envoys' respectful attitude towards him. But the first divine envoy didn't come out when the lightning pool caused such a big commotion. Now he suddenly sent Nen Jinshu to the illusionary god ocean. It's really strange. Chu Luiwei said and looked at Su Li. He's already out of the heavenly gate? Su Li nodded. When she heard Nen Jinshu's words, she also felt that something was wrong and simply followed him out of the illusionary god palace. She was worried that Nen Jinshu would be suspicious, so she didn't follow her. After walking for a while, she turned back to Chu Luiwei. However, she was certain that Nen Jinshu had indeed gone to the Elysium. Looking at the time, he must have already left. Chu Luiwei pondered for a moment, then said, I'll go out and take a look too. What? Su Li widened her beautiful eyes in surprise. How can that be? Leaving the heavenly gates was already difficult enough, let alone going to the illusionary god sea? Little you don't have the slightest bit of understanding towards the illusory god sea. Isn't it too risky for you to go there directly? Su Li disagreed. Chu Luiwei had already made up his mind. This is a rare opportunity. Su Li's lips moved. Looking at her determined expression, It was obvious that she could not be persuaded. What's in the illusionary god sea that's worthy of you acting like this? Chu Luiwe paused. It's very likely that Senior Diwu is trapped there. Su Li was shocked. Upon hearing this, she finally understood why Chu Luiwe insisted on going no matter what. But, don't worry, Mr. Su. I plan to go there openly and investigate first. It won't be too late to take action after I've figured out the situation. After all, the illusionary god sea was just outside the Elysium. There would not be any danger if they just went to take a look at the Silver Bridge. Although Chu Luiwe also wanted to bring Diwu Zhangzi back immediately, she would not do anything that she was not confident of. If she took the risk now, not only would she not be able to save him, but she might even lose her life. She was very clear about this. Su Li was finally relieved. I'll go with you. Chu Luiwe shook her head. No need. I'll go with Hongyu. The fewer people involved in this matter, the better. Su Li could only agree. Be careful. Mu Hongyu was cultivating in her room. Ever since she retrieved the Mahayana cultivation method from the precious treasure pavilion, she hadn't left her room. Hongyu. Upon hearing Chu Luiwe's voice, Mu Hongyu snapped out of her daze and got up to open the door. Luyu, what's the matter? Chu Luiwe raised her chin. Follow me out of the Elysium and to the illusionary god sea. Mu Hongyu was stunned. Now. Chu Luiwe briefly explained the matter. It's a rare opportunity. Maybe we can gain something. Mu Hongyu hurriedly said, then let's not wait. Let's go quickly. After taking 2 steps, she suddenly stopped. Wait, Luyu, how are we going to get out now? Wasn't the Elysium heavily guarded? Chu Luiwe waved her hand carelessly. When we reach the Elysium, let Jin Yunlai open the door. Mu Hongyu, she glanced at Chu Luiwe faintly. Luyu, how can you be sure that he'll agree? Previously, he could say that he had gone to the weapon refining saint. What about this time? Chu Luiwe's lips curled up slightly. I have my ways. The two of them walked straight and arrived at the Elysium. However, when they arrived, they were surprised to find that many people had already gathered here. It was very lively. Did Nanjin Shu really leave here and go to the illusionary god ocean? I saw it with my own eyes. How can it be fake? Is he crazy? The illusionary god ocean is very dangerous. Isn't it too bold to use it to improve his cultivation? Isn't he afraid of dying there? Sure, they're different from us. Think about it. He entered the illusionary god palace as soon as he arrived. Of course, he's different from us. It's still very dangerous, isn't it? Even venerables can only stay in the illusionary god ocean for a few hours at most. Besides, the illusionary god ocean has always been a place of punishment. Who knows how many skeletons are buried there? This is the first time I've seen someone who wants to cultivate there. Chu Luiwe and Mu Hongyu looked at each other. It turned out that the news had already spread. Luyu, what should we do? Mu Hongyu asked softly. Chu Luiwe paused. The heavens want to help me. I have to go. With that, she continued to walk forward. Soon, some people noticed their arrival, and they all had different expressions on their faces. Chu Luiwe ignored them. She went straight to the Elysium and was about to step out. Everyone was shocked. But the barrier buzzed. A heavy pressure stopped Chu Luiwe. Following this, a furious voice could be heard once again. Shangguanyu, what are you trying to do? Chu Luiwe turned around and looked at Jin Yunlai, who rushed over in an instant. Her eyes curved and she smiled brightly. Seventh Messenger, you're here? Can you please open the door? She was quite fast. Jin Yunlai was originally there to denounce her, but when she heard this, she choked. Then, a flame burned in her chest. What did you say? Just how much courage did she have to ask him to open the gate of heaven so naturally? Chu Luiwe's smile didn't change. I heard that Nan Jinshu went to the illusionary god ocean to improve his cultivation. I was curious. Look, everyone is here. If there's such a good thing, why don't you give us a chance and let everyone go together? Jin Yunlai's forehead twitched. Chapter 2305. He had just found out that Nan Jinshu had met the first divine emissary and obtained a passage talisman to cultivate in the illusionary god ocean. How did the news spread throughout the illusionary god palace in the blink of an eye? It even attracted so many people. Jin Yunlai's mind raced. Nan Jinshu must have been too arrogant and attracted too much attention. That's why, when he heard that Nan Jinshu had met the first divine emissary, he was shocked and thought that Nan Jinshu was quite capable. Who knew that he was a brainless person? How could such a thing be spread so casually? He suppressed the anger in his heart and said in a low voice, Nan Jinshu went with the first divine emissary's permission. If you have the ability, I won't stop you. Chu Luiwei blinked. Seventh divine emissary, that's why we want to go out and take a look. Speaking of which, I have a good relationship with family head Nan. I didn't expect him to be so powerful. Not only can he enter the illusionary god palace, but he can also meet the first divine emissary and go to the illusionary god ocean. If we can go out and take a look and see family head Nan's glory, we can learn something. What do you think? Jin Yunlai looked at her suspiciously. Just go out and take a look? Yes, didn't family head Nan go to the illusionary god ocean? We'll just take a look from the bridge. After all, it wasn't easy for us to come up here. We know how dangerous the illusionary god ocean is. Why would we gamble with our lives? Mu Hongyu immediately nodded. We're just going to take a look. Anyway, this is the illusionary god palace's territory. Are you worried that we'll do something out of line? Jin Yunlai's expression was cold. This group of people gathered here and even asked him to open the door. They were already out of line. What else did they want? Many people around them looked at each other. Actually, they were also very curious. It would be good if they could really go and take a look. Jin Yunlai said in a low voice. What kind of place is the illusionary god ocean? Is it somewhere you can go as you please? Even if they stood on the bridge and watched, it was absolutely not allowed. I'll let you go this time, but if you do it again, I won't let you off so easily. As he spoke, he looked around with undisguised warning in his eyes. Everyone's little thoughts were suppressed again. After Jin Yunlai finished speaking, she turned around to leave. Chu Liwei suddenly sighed softly. Sigh, since the seventh divine emissary is unwilling to let us pass, then we can only forget about it. Since I have nothing to do, let's take a walk around Feng Ming Mountain. Jin Yunlai stopped in her tracks. He turned around and stared at Chu Liwei. What are you trying to do? To find Dumpling. Chu Liue's lips curved slightly. Since I can't go to the Mirage God Sea, I can only find Dumpling to relieve my boredom. Recently, she has been making a fuss about going out to play a few rounds. If there's no other way, I should ask the second messenger if he can bring Dumpling out for a walk. You! She was clearly using Dumpling to threaten him. Now, the second messenger valued Dumpling a lot, and Dumpling was extremely dependent on Chu Liwei. She was still young and was at the age where she could make a fuss. In addition, she already knew that Yi Zhao was trapped in the lightning pool, so she was now full of hostility towards the Mirage God Palace. If Chu Liwei said something to Dumpling and caused Dumpling to explode, who knew what she would do? This Chu Liwei really knew how to push her luck. He had already made an exception to let her go the last time, but she still wanted to do it again. Chu Liwei looked at Mu Hongyu. Hongyu, you haven't seen Dumpling for a long time, right? I'll bring her out. 2 hours. Jin Yunlai coldly interrupted Chu Liwei. Chu Liwei sneered. Seventh messenger, what can you do in 2 hours? Are you afraid that I'll learn something from Nan Jinshu? Jin Yunlai's face was cold. After a while, she said, I'll give you 1 day. If you're not back by this time tomorrow. Chu Liwei immediately smiled. Deal. The Mirage God Sea is extremely dangerous. After leaving the Heavenly Gate, I won't care if you live or die. You will bear all the consequences yourselves. Chu Liwei nodded with a relaxed expression. Of course. Since she dared to go, she was prepared. Jin Yunlai coldly stared at her for a while before waving her sleeve. Buzz, the barrier opened. Chu Liwei stepped out without hesitation. Hongyu, follow me. Coming. Mu Hongyu's movements were very fast, and she almost caught up with him. The two figures quickly disappeared. Many people looked at each other. After a while, a young man tentatively stepped forward. Jin Yunlai didn't stop him. That person immediately felt relieved and lifted his foot to walk out. With someone taking the lead, the people behind him moved faster. Soon, more than 10 people left the heavenly gate. However, not everyone chose to do so. No matter what, the illusionary god sea is extremely dangerous. What if I really die there if I go out like this? That's true. I think Nanjin Shu must have a trump card if he dares to go. I'm afraid we can't compete. Forget it, forget it. The first messenger hasn't come out for many years. She didn't even meet the other messengers. Now that she's meeting Nanjin Shu alone, isn't that enough to explain the problem? Anyway, I don't think I'm that capable. I won't join in the fun. Why don't we wait until this time tomorrow and see what Sheng Guanyu and the others have to say? Some people left the heavenly gate, while others chose to stay. Jin Yunlai snorted coldly, flicked his sleeves and left. She wanted to see how capable Chu Luiwei was. As soon as Jin Yunlai returned to the Mirage God Palace, she went straight in a certain direction. She didn't walk far before she bumped into Xu Jing. Needless to say, she came from the sixth messenger again. Jin Yunlai had been looking for an opportunity to ask her how the sixth messenger was doing. However, now that she saw her, she couldn't be bothered to ask. Xu Jing was also in a hurry. Her eyes were filled with shock. Seventh messenger, I just heard that Nanjin Shu went to the Mirage God Sea after meeting the first messenger? Jin Yunlai nodded. Her expression was cold. They've been there for a while. Moreover, the news has spread in the Mirage God Palace. Everyone knows. Sheng Guanyu even made a fuss about going out to take a look. Is she crazy? Xu Jing suddenly raised her voice. Seventh messenger, you didn't let her go, did you? She threatened me with dumpling. After much consideration, I let her go. Other than her, some people from the Mirage God Palace also followed her. Xu Jing sucked in a breath of cold air. Chu Luiwei was crazy, and the seventh messenger wasn't clear-headed either? Her reaction made Jin Yunlai frown. The news spread like wildfire in a short period of time. The more you don't let them go, the more curious they are. Why don't you just let them go for a day and let them see for themselves? The Mirage God Sea. Is it a place they can step into as they wish? Everyone had a deep-rooted bad habit. There were some principles that no one would listen to no matter how many times you repeated them. Only when they felt the pain themselves would they deeply understand and remember it. Chapter 2306. Xu Jing's expression softened. Jin Yunlai's words weren't without reason. For 10,000 years, the Mirage God Ocean had been under the control of the first divine envoy. It was heavily guarded and dangerous. The Yu Qian had inherited almost all the rights of the first divine envoy, except for this one. So until now, even the Yu Qian couldn't enter the Mirage God Ocean without the permission of the first divine envoy. Chu Luiwei and the others were indeed digging their own graves. Xu Jing thought of something else and frowned. What did Nanjin Shu do? Why is the first divine envoy willing to see him? Also, this happened not long ago. How did everyone know about it? Jin Yunlai shook her head and continued walking. I don't know. So, I plan to ask the first divine envoy again. Xu Jing hurriedly said, I'll go too. When the two of them arrived, they saw two people walking out of the door. They were two young men who looked to be in their mid-20s. One was handsome, and the other was delicate. Both of them had extraordinary temperaments. Jin Yunlai and Xu Jing were shocked when they saw them. Jiulong, Xian, these two were the 9th and 10th divine envoys. They were both cultivating in seclusion. Why did they suddenly come here? And it seemed like they had just met the first divine envoy. Jiulong and Xian looked over and greeted them. Greetings, 7th and 8th divine envoys. Jin Yunlai glanced at the two of them. Have you met the first divine envoy? The two of them nodded. The first divine envoy ordered us to go to the god-slaying tomb in the divine ruins world immediately. We are about to leave. The first divine envoy gave the order personally? Xu Jing couldn't believe it. One had to know that that person hadn't cared about the illusory god palace for many years. This was too sudden. Jin Yunlai suddenly realized something. Could it be because of Nan Jinshu? Sure enough, Shi Yan immediately explained, rumor has it that the third score is most likely there, so the first oracle sent the two of us to look for it together. Jin Yunlai and Shu Jing were both shocked. Then they finally understood. No wonder the first divine envoy suddenly made such a big move. It was because of this. Although there were many divine envoys in the illusory god palace, there were very few who had the time and energy to do so. These two were indeed the most suitable choices. Jiolong said, if there's nothing else, we'll be taking our leave. After all, this was a task that the first oracle had personally given them. They did not dare to slack off. Jin Yunlai nodded. The two of them quickly left. Looking at the backs of the two people, Shu Jing frowned. After thinking for a moment, she walked towards the door. However, he was stopped by a barrier as soon as he arrived. A low and indifferent voice came from inside. Just do what you have to do. Shu Jing and his assistant were both stunned. Does this mean that he doesn't want us to intervene? Shu Jing was unwilling to give up. First oracle, this is a matter of great importance. Isn't it not enough to send only the two of them? After a moment, the voice came again. Shu Jing, if you don't want to look after the herb mountain anymore, you can go with them. Shu Jing's face suddenly turned pale and he took a few steps back. Shu Jing has offended you. Please forgive me, first oracle. Jin Yunlai also fell silent. The first oracle's meaning was very clear. There was really no need to continue asking. He cupped his hands and left. Then we won't disturb you anymore. After saying that, he gave Shu Jing a look. Shu Jing walked a few steps and suddenly thought of something. He paused and asked hesitantly, First oracle, the sixth oracle's divine body has been damaged. If you want to rebuild it, you need to use the golden Tianlei in the lightning pool. But now that the lightning pool is sealed, do you think? Originally, everything was going smoothly. They were just waiting for the right time. Who knew that the lightning pool would suddenly riot and disrupt their plans? If they couldn't rebuild the divine body as soon as possible, wouldn't the pills that she had painstakingly refined go to waste? Now, she didn't know when the lightning pool would be unsealed. Who knew how long they would have to wait? Therefore, she could only try to ask the first oracle for help. The courtyard quieted down, and a layer of coldness gradually surged out. Shu Jing's heart skipped a beat, and she suddenly felt uneasy. Then, she heard the person inside say coldly, Then let him suffer. Even after walking for a long distance, Shu Jing's heart still did not calm down. She walked a little absent-mindedly, and her eyes were unfocused. It wasn't until Jin Yunlai was about to go in another direction that she came back to her senses. She quickly walked a few steps and came in front of Jin Yunlai. When did the sixth oracle offend the first oracle? Jin Yunlai frowned. How would I know? Shu Jing's lips were still a little pale. She couldn't help but mutter in a low voice, This can't be. The first oracle has been in seclusion for many years, but the sixth oracle just came back not long ago. How could he offend the first oracle? Moreover, the first oracle is indifferent and rarely gets angry. But just now, when she mentioned the sixth divine envoy, the first divine envoy's voice contained a rare hint of anger. Jin Yunlai also heard it. This was different from the time when she wanted to rush in and annoy the first oracle. The sixth oracle seemed to have made a big mistake. So much so that the first oracle refused to help him rebuild his divine body. To him, this was clearly a piece of cake. Shu Jing suddenly thought of something, and her expression changed slightly. That's right, when the sixth oracle mentioned the first oracle, he seemed to be very frightened. At that time, she only thought that he was in awe and didn't think much of it. But now that she thought about it, Jin Yunlai looked at her and said, If you really want to know, why don't you just ask the sixth oracle? At this moment, Chu Luiyue and Mu Hongyu walked out of the divine gate and arrived at the silver bridge again. Chu Luiyue looked around as she walked. Soon, she saw a familiar figure. Nan Jinshu. Mu Hongyu immediately followed her gaze. Where is he? Above the deep blue sea in the distance, there was a person flying through the air. It was Nan Jinshu. He went deeper into the illusionary god sea before stopping. Then, he rushed directly into the illusionary god sea. Chapter 2307. The onlookers on the Silver Bridge grew restless when they saw this. Nan Jinshu actually went in just like that? Even Her Eminence can't stay in the Mirage God Ocean for too long. Where did he get his confidence from? The Mirage God Ocean contains an abundant amount of energy. It can greatly increase one's strength if one refines one's bones and blood, but it's also extremely dangerous. I wonder how long it'll take for Nan Jinshu to come back up? Chu Liuyue's expression hardened. Waves surged in the distance, and the aura was piercingly cold. Even though he was standing on the Silver Bridge, he could still clearly feel the terrifying power contained in the sea below. Even she didn't have much confidence that she would be able to return safely after going down. Nan Jinshu, she held her breath and focused. While keeping an eye on Nan Jinshu's situation, she also listened carefully to her surroundings. I wonder if Diwu Zhangze can sense the changes outside. She glanced out of the corner of her eye and saw that Mu Hongyu seemed to have entered a meditative state. Her brows were slightly furrowed, and her expression was calm. She was looking at the Mirage God Ocean. The noise on the Silver Bridge gradually dissipated. As time passed, the crowd gradually quieted down. Many people were curious about the Mirage God Ocean and wanted to go down to take a look, but none of them had made up their minds to do so. After all, everyone only had one life. Moreover, the seventh divine emissary had made it very clear that once they left the Heaven Gate, they would die regardless of whether they lived or died. When the time came, they wouldn't even have anyone to call for help. Thus, everyone waited in tacit understanding. It wouldn't be too late to make a decision after Nan Jinshu's situation cleared up. After a long while, nothing seemed out of the ordinary. Chu Luiyue was a little disappointed and worried. I wonder how Diwu Zhangze is doing. Mu Hongyu, on the other hand, changed her position and looked in another direction. Chu Luiyue didn't disturb her. Suddenly, the crowd became restless again. Chu Luiyue instinctively turned around and saw two young men walking out of the heavenly gate one after another. These were two completely unfamiliar faces, but Chu Luiyue could vaguely guess the other party's identity the moment she saw them. Judging from his noble aura, he was probably an oracle as well. Sure enough, some sharp-eyed people had already recognized the identities of these two people and hurriedly bowed. Greetings, 9th and 10th divine emissaries. Hearing this, the remaining people immediately bowed. Jiao Long and Xian only nodded slightly. They didn't say anything and walked down. When he passed by Chu Luiyue nodded slightly. Jiao Long suddenly stopped in his tracks and turned to look at Chu Luiyue. Are you Shangguanyu? Chu Luiyue looked up. The young man's face was filled with curiosity and inquiry. Chu Luiyue nodded. Exactly. Jiao Long laughed. You're quite capable. This didn't sound like a compliment. Shi Yan glanced over. Jiao Long, let's go. The two of them had always had a good relationship, so the way they addressed each other was more casual. Jiao Long retracted her gaze and followed Shi Yan. The two of them arrived at the bottom of the Silver Bridge. Then, with a flash of their figures, they disappeared from the spot. Divine emissaries were all above the god realm, so crossing the illusion god sea wasn't a problem for them. But the question was, where were they going? The two oracles actually left the Heaven Gate. What are they doing? These two rarely show their faces in public. That's right. This is the first time I've seen them after so many years. I didn't expect them to be here. All sorts of discussions broke out. There were also a few people silently sizing up Chu Luiyue. What did the 9th divine emissary mean by that? Chu Luiyue narrowed her eyes. In truth, she had caused a lot of trouble in the Illusion God Palace recently, so it was normal for the oracles to be curious about her. What she wanted to know more was why these two had gone to the Divine Ruins world. For two oracles to be dispatched at the same time, it must be no small matter. After thinking for a while, she couldn't find any clues, so she temporarily suppressed this thought. Master, Yu Jiao and Shi Yan went out. I think it has something to do with Nan Jinshu. In the room, Rong Xiu sat behind the table, reading a book in his hand. Hearing Yanqing's words, he replied with a and flipped a page of the book. Other than that, there was no other reaction. Yanqing hesitated for a moment and asked, "Why don't I go and find out where they went?" Rong Xiu's thin lips curved. "No need to ask. They went to the god-slaying mound." God-slaying mound? Yanqing was shocked. Why are they going to the god-slaying mound at this time? For the last zither score, of course. Other than that, what else could make the illusion god palace do such a big thing? Yanqing frowned. That zither score is also very important to Madam. If they find it first, they won't find it. Rong Xiu laughed, put down the book and looked out the window. It will belong to whoever it belongs to. Yanqing retreated from the room. He was a little worried at first, but judging from his master's reaction, it seemed that he didn't care too much about it. Wind Element Pill. 1 Platycladus orientalis, 3 Huai Mingzi, 1 Golden Sand Vine. Little Hachi's lazy voice came. Yanqing looked up and saw Little Hachi and Jian Fengqi sitting face to face in the yard. Jian Fengqi was holding a book in his hand, and there was a pile of herbs on the stone table in front of him. Listening to Little Hachi lazily reciting the prescription of the wind element pill, Jian Fengqi's eyes twitched. "You really know everything on this list." Little Hachi chuckled and picked a Jinling fruit. Her delicate hands were slender and delicate, as if they were carved out of jade. They seemed to be more crystal clear than the Jinling fruit. She put the Jinling fruit into her mouth, and her voice was a little muffled. "I told you before, I've already broken through to the Supreme Doctor level, but you didn't believe me." TSK, this time he learned his lesson. Jian Fengqi suddenly felt a headache coming on. He closed the book in his hand and took a deep breath. "There's no way I can survive." Ever since he was deeply hurt by Chu Luiyue, Jian Fengqi silently prepared to work hard, vowing to win back his pride. Thinking that Little Hachi was also a celestial physician, he wanted to compare notes with her. However, Little Hachi rejected him, and the reason was very simple. He was not qualified. With Jian Fengqi's temper, how could he stand this? He immediately asked for a test. However, Little Hachi directly handed over a prescription. Although he hadn't broken through, he could see that the pills on the list were all at the Supreme Doctor level. Then Little Hachi really did recite it backwards. "Young Master Jian, don't talk about Master, even if you compare yourself to me, you're still a little brother." Jian Fengqi put down the book and stood up angrily. Little Hachi smiled and waved her hand generously. "This book is for you, no need to thank me." Jian Fengqi turned around, picked up the book, and left angrily. Chapter 2308. "Tisk, it's been so many years. Haven't you suffered enough blows yet?" Little Hachi smiled leisurely. "Your courage is commendable." Jian Fengqi staggered and walked even faster. After a while, his figure disappeared outside the door. Well, it was obvious that he had gone to the herb mountain. Little Hachi was in a good mood after dealing a blow to the proud young Master Jian in all aspects. She glanced around and saw Yanqing. She smiled and said, "Oh, Lord Yanqing, where are you going?" Her greeting was just a casual greeting. Who would have thought that Yanqing would take a step forward and walk over to her? When he was 3 steps away from Little 8, he stopped and stood still. His figure was thin and tall. With Little 8 sitting on him and standing on him, he appeared even more oppressive. Jian Fengqi is 27 years old this year. If I remember correctly, he should be older than you, right? Little Hachi was stunned. She was still chewing on the Jinling fruit. When she came to her senses, her eyes curved and she burst out laughing. "Lord Yanqing, I was just joking. You don't have to take it seriously." Yanqing pursed his lips slightly. Little Hachi blinked her beautiful eyes. She stood up and moved closer. The distance between the two of them was instantly shortened. "Lord Yanqing." Little Hachi's cheeks were still puffed up. When she opened her mouth, a sweet fruity fragrance spread out. It was the taste of the Jinling fruit in her mouth. Yanqing's eyes landed on her moist and plump red lips for a moment. Then he quietly looked away. Little Hachi did not notice. She smiled and said, "You don't seem very happy." Yanqing's voice was cold. I've always been like this. I'm not happy or unhappy. Little Hachi snorted in her heart. Everyone had 7 emotions and 6 desires. This Lord Yanqing seemed to be an exception. She turned around and smiled, the smoke swirling around her. If young Master Jian can be my younger brother, then Lord Yanqing can also be my elder brother. You see, your status is much higher than his. Yanqing frowned. Little Hachi tilted her head. Brother Yanqing? The originally light and sweet fragrance seemed to have suddenly become rich and thick, making people a little intoxicated. Her voice had always been soft and gentle, and he had long since gotten used to it. However, at this moment, he suddenly felt that something was different, as if his heart had been gently scratched by something. Yanqing turned around and left. Sigh. Seeing that there was no response from the other party, Little 8 pursed her lips and swallowed the fruit in her mouth. I can't call you little brother or big brother. You're really hard to please. Yanqing went straight back to her room. As soon as she entered the room, she immediately felt that something was wrong and looked up at the screen. Her cold gaze was as sharp as a knife, as if she was going to cut the screen. Come out. Sigh, it's not like you don't know it's me. Can't you be nicer? A figure slowly walked out from behind. It was Yu Mo. Yanqing's expression did not change. If I didn't know it's you, you would have died here. A strange smile appeared on Yu Mo's face as he said word by word, You're too fierce, brother Yanqing, big brother. As soon as he finished speaking, a strong wind attacked. Swish! Yu Mo was shocked and immediately dodged. He patted his chest with lingering fear. TSK, we were talking nicely. Why did you hit me? Yanqing's eyes were as cold as ice. If you want to die, I can send you on your way. Yu Mo snorted. I haven't lived long enough. Forget it. How interesting it was to live. Yanqing was speechless because of a girl's words. If he died, he would not be able to see such a wonderful scene. No wonder you're Madam's subordinate. Little Hachi, you're really awesome. If you have something to say, just say it. If not, get lost. It was rare for Yanqing to say so many words to him, but it was not good. Yu Mo silently held back a tear of sympathy for himself and then said, I'm here to talk to you about something serious. The first oracle sent Jiu Long and Shi Yan to the god-slaying tomb. You already know, right? Yanqing nodded. The news was sent by Nanjinshu. By right, Jun Jiuqing should know about it, but he didn't say anything. And after that he went into seclusion. I feel something is wrong. Yanqing frowned. What do you mean? Yu Mo took a deep breath and said seriously, he went to the main hall of the palace of the illusory god. Time passed slowly. It was still calm above the sea. Nanjinshu still hadn't come out. If it weren't for the fact that the surrounding energy kept flowing in Nanjinshu's direction, everyone would have thought something had happened to him. After a while, Mu Hongyu finally came back to her senses and went to Chu Luiyue. Chu Luiyue turned to look at her. Their eyes met. Mu Hongyu frowned and shook her head. She had already tested it. Under the illusory god ocean, the space was indeed distorted. But standing on the silver bridge, she couldn't check it out because of the water. She had tried a few methods, but none of them worked. Chu Luiyue's eyes flickered. Then she made up her mind. I'll go down and take a look. Since she couldn't see the whole picture here, she might as well go down and check it out. Mu Hongyu was shocked and quickly pulled her wrist. It was too dangerous down there. Even she wasn't confident that she could avoid the distorted space. Not to mention Chu Luiyue. Chu Luiyue shook her head. This was a rare opportunity. If she could figure out the situation down there, it would be easier for Mu Hongyu to take action later. Hearing the conversation between the two of them, many people around them looked over in surprise. Shengguanyu wants to go down there? She's too bold. I heard that she crossed the sea very easily before. She even brought a few high gods with her. She must be quite confident, right? That's different from this. The illusory god ocean. She might not be able to come back up after going down. Besides, she doesn't have the first divine envoy's permission. Isn't she just digging her own grave? Let's just wait and see. If one had the first divine envoy's permission, they would have an extra layer of protection in the illusory God Ocean. Wasn't Nan Jinshu the same? However, almost no one planned to go down like Chu Luiyue. A long time ago, there were people who tried to sneak into the illusory God Ocean. In the end, all of them died and their souls were destroyed. That was why everyone was so afraid. Even though they were already standing on the Silver Bridge, they didn't dare to go down. Upon hearing that, Mu Hongyu gritted her teeth. "I'll go with you." She might be able to help her a little. Chu Luiyue shook her head. "It's better for you to wait here." After all, she could better spy on the changes and movements in the illusory God Ocean. "I'll be back soon." With that, Chu Luiyue patted her hand gently. Then, she tiptoed and headed in Nan Jinshu's direction. Chapter 2309. Chu Luiyue was very fast. The blue-black sea was surging, mysterious and unfathomable. The sea breeze carried a hint of coolness as it brushed past her face, lifting her hair and skirt. Thick energies intertwined, forming an enormous pressure that even made the space above the sea as difficult to traverse. Chu Luiyue's body flickered with a dazzling light. She summoned the Star Darkness sword and gripped it tightly in her hand. A faint golden light flickered, appearing especially bright and eye-catching in this dark sky and sea. The further she went, the heavier the pressure. The smell of blood gradually spread in the air. It was very faint, but it could not be ignored. Chu Luiyue's heart trembled. Suddenly, her footsteps paused as she stared ahead. A deep whirlpool had appeared on the surface of the sea not far away from her. The surrounding seawater flowed quietly without the slightest sound. If not for the fact that Chu Luiyue was standing very close, she probably would not have noticed it. Streams of incomparably vigorous power also surged downwards. A figure was faintly discernible. Chu Luiyue only needed a glance to recognize that person. It was Nan Jinshu. At this moment, there was a palm-sized seal floating quietly above his head. His entire body was suffused with a layer of faint red light, forming a natural barrier. Those fierce surges of energy collided with it and were silently swallowed without any sound. The power contained in that seal was powerful and noble, and clearly did not come from Nan Jinshu. That was the seal of the first divine emissary. Chu Luiyue's heart trembled as she moved closer, wanting to see it more clearly. She was very curious about this first divine emissary. After coming to the Illusion God Palace, she had seen several divine emissaries. But the most mysterious one was the first divine emissary. Even if she had not seen him, she could clearly feel that the first divine emissary's status was far higher than the other divine emissaries. Even the second divine emissary, Yu Qian, was the same. Moreover, he was in charge of the Illusion God Ocean. If she wanted to save Diwu Zhangzi, she had to find a way to get past the first divine emissary. However, after walking forward for a short distance, she felt an invisible force stopping her from going any further. Chu Luiyue frowned slightly. This aura, why does it seem so familiar? He couldn't describe the specific feeling, but there was indeed an inexplicable sense of familiarity, as if he had seen it somewhere before. Chu Luiyue furrowed his brows and thought for a while, but to no avail. He could only put this idea aside for the time being. Nan Jinshu's aura kept growing stronger. Chu Luiyue hesitated for a moment before finally rushing into the illusionary God Sea. In the lonely and quiet cage, Dugamabao suddenly opened his eyes and frowned. A moment later, a cloud of black fog condensed outside the cage. A hoarse and gloomy laugh came from inside. She actually went to the illusionary God Sea. It can be seen that she really cares about Diwu. In order to save him, he didn't even hesitate to take such a risk. This case, even if Diwu dies this time, he should be able to rest in peace, right? Even though he was smiling, his tone was filled with hatred as he gnashed his teeth. Diwu Zhangzi suddenly betrayed him back then. This debt had yet to be settled. Dugamabao's brows gradually relaxed, and he returned to his usual cold and indifferent appearance. Isn't it natural for her to go to the illusionary God Sea? Including Herb Mountain, Lightning Pool, Phoenix Cry Mountain, and even the illusionary God Palace. Where can she not go? Of course, she can't go now. The person opposite him seemed to be infuriated, and his voice became shrill. Don't forget who is in charge of the illusionary god C now. She's just digging her own grave by going there this time. Dugamabao suddenly laughed and mocked. You don't even dare to kill me, let alone her? The person in the black fog suddenly fell silent. After a long while. You're right. I won't take any of your lives now. However, if you think that I can't do anything to you, you're too naive. When Lan Xiao reconstructed his divine body, he swallowed a total of 5 golden tianlei, right? Dugamabao's heart suddenly sank. Then he heard the voice say again. The 6th divine envoy needs to reconstruct his divine body now, but unfortunately, the lightning pool has been sealed, so it's been delayed. Although I can't kill Lan Xiao, it's easy for me to take the power of the tianlei in his body. Chu Luiwei rushed into the sea. In an instant, a bone-chilling coldness surrounded him from all directions. It was as if dense steel needles were stabbing him endlessly. It was as if they wanted to pierce through his flesh and bones. Chu Luiwei waved her hand lightly, and a beautiful transparent barrier surrounded her. With this barrier's protection, the bone-chilling coldness lessened significantly. She looked forward. She could see Nanjinshu's figure more clearly here. The vortex continued to suck in the surrounding energy, and in the end, all of it poured into his head from the top of his head. He closed his eyes, clenched his fists, and frowned. He seemed to be in pain. The power of the seawater was enough to kill a high god on the spot. That was why even Her Eminence had to go through a lot of torture here. This was the result of him being protected by the seal. If Nanjinshu came here himself, he wouldn't be any better than those high gods. A thin ray of light suddenly appeared in front of Chu Luiwei. The sea water surged, and the ray of light drifted over with the waves. Chu Luiwei suddenly felt a deep sense of unease. She turned around and went to the side. The thread-like light floated past her feet. An extremely thin black spatial crack appeared. Chu Luiwei's pupils contracted. Chapter 23:10. This was no ordinary stream of light. It was the squeezing force produced when different spaces intersected. Chu Luiwei held her breath, her temples throbbing. If she had not dodged in time, she would have. She looked down and saw that stream of light quickly dissipate. However, in the depths of this sea, there were similar streams of light that were faintly discernible. Mu Hongyu had said before that under the illusory god sea, countless spatial forces intersected, and it was extremely dangerous. Now, it seemed that she was right. If Diwu Zhangze was really trapped down here, Chu Luiwei gritted her teeth. Diwu Zhangze did not have a divine body, and did not have an advantage to begin with. If he went through so much torture, the mastermind purposely separated Diwu Zhangze and Dugamabao, and locked him up here alone. But at this moment, she suddenly felt a chill on her back. Her heart skipped a beat. Without thinking, she immediately turned around and swung her sword. Piercingly cold sword chi flew out. Pissed. There was the faint sound of something being cut apart. A slender stream of light was instantly cut into two. Chu Luiwei exhaled softly. Then she suddenly thought of something, and looked at Nanjinshu again. He was firmly protected by that sigil. Those strange streams of light all avoided him, and could not hurt him at all. No wonder. The first divine envoy sigil was indeed interesting. Chu Luiwei had a thought and dove down. The further down she went, the more streams of light there were. They were like seaweed, drifting freely on the bottom of the sea, but they carried fatal lethality. Gradually, when they brushed past Chu Luiwei, she would feel a slight pain. Her divine body was almost unable to withstand the spatial power here. Chu Luiwei knew this very well. However, she did not stop. She did not even slow down. She held her sword in her hand, and as if she was cutting through brambles, she cut and dispersed all of them. After an unknown period of time, a ball of light finally appeared in her sight. All of the streams of light flew out from this place. Some drifted into the distance, constantly tearing apart space, while some intertwined with each other, causing energy to scatter chaotically. She faintly felt a sense of uneasiness in her heart and finally stopped. Within that ball of light, a figure was faintly discernible. Chu Luiyue stared intently. Of course, she wanted to go, but she knew very well that it was too dangerous. Just by standing there, she was already out of breath. If she were to move forward, suddenly, a strange fluctuation came from the interspatial ring on her finger. Chu Luiyue was stunned and subconsciously looked down. Suddenly, a stone rolled out from within. It gently floated down. Chu Luiyue immediately stretched out his hand to grab it, but the rock easily dodged and then ran down at an even faster speed. Just as Chu Luiyue was filled with doubts, a stream of light flew over and was about to cut the stone. Chu Luiyue frowned. Although she didn't mean to bring these stones back, after a long time, she still had some feelings for them. Especially since these stones had helped her a lot in the past and saved her from danger several times. Naturally, she couldn't bear to part with them. Just as she was about to make a move, a scene suddenly happened in front of her, causing her to pause. She saw that the stone suddenly emitted a warm orange light. That was the god domain inside. This god domain completely enveloped the stone. Then, that silver thread-like stream of light flew over and automatically wrapped around the stone, merging into the god domain. Chu Luiyue was shocked and almost suspected that she had seen wrongly. She closed her eyes and looked again. The scene in front of her had not changed at all. The stone floated silently in the air, easily neutralizing the ferocious energy contained in the streak of light. At first glance, it looked like a thin thread tied to the stone. Since the stone did not move, the thread could only float gently on the spot. Chu Luiyue blinked. Is this stabilizing that small space? Just as she was filled with shock, a second stone rolled out of the universe ring. Just like the previous one, this one ran to another location. After wrapping around a stream of light, it stayed there quietly. Chu Luiyue almost immediately felt that the chaotic and heavy pressure around her had lessened a little. Although it was very subtle, it was indeed there. Just as she was stunned, more and more stones ran out and spread out in all directions. At this moment, Mu Hongyu was standing on the silver bridge and waiting anxiously. She stared in the direction where Chu Luiyue had disappeared. Her hands were clasped together, and her heart was hanging high. Lu Yu had already gone down for a while. Why was there no movement at all? Gradually, all kinds of discussions could be heard around her. It's been so long, but Shangguan Yu still hasn't returned. Could something have happened to her? I don't think so. I heard that she has a few trump cards on her. Other things aside, she should have no problem staying alive. That's hard to say. It's risky to enter the Mirage God Ocean without the first divine envoy's permission. Mu Hongyu frowned. At this moment, she was suddenly shocked. She looked at the sea in the distance, and a trace of disbelief flashed across her eyes. The countless intersecting spaces under the sea seemed to be gradually stabilizing. She took a few steps forward, not daring to breathe too loudly, afraid that she was mistaken. However, everything was proceeding in an orderly manner. The scene in her mind was gradually becoming clearer. Nanjin Shu soon noticed that something was wrong. That was because the energy flowing into his body was gradually decreasing. At a certain moment, he finally opened his eyes and looked up. The vortex had shrunk a lot compared to before. Naturally, the energy contained in it could not be compared to before. How could this be? Nanjin Shu frowned. The energy in the Mirage God Ocean was endless. He was just taking a drop in the ocean to increase his cultivation base. Why was this not working? Soon, he realized that the reason for this was that the energy around him seemed to have dispersed a lot compared to before. Many of them were moving toward the depths of the sea. He took the opportunity to look down. It was fine if he did not look, but when he did, he was immediately horrified. In the depths of the dark sea, balls of light were quietly flickering. They were very close to each other. At a glance, they looked like a pile of gorgeous lights. However, he soon realized that this was not the case. That was because those balls of light were emitting a unique pressure. He was familiar with this feeling. That's a god domain? Nanjin Shu muttered in disbelief. Then, a light suddenly flashed across his mind. Shangguan Yu, isn't that her 3,000 god domains? She's here too, and she's even using her god domain to devour the energy in the Mirage God Ocean? Digression, an ink-stained February floated by. Fifth update around 7 a.m. Chapter 23:11. Chu Liwei crossed her arms and looked at the balls of gorgeous god territory floating in front of her. She rubbed her glabella as if she had a headache. It shouldn't have been like this. She just wanted to check out the situation first so that Mu Hongyu could rescue Diwu Zhangzi after she broke through to the Mahayana realm. She didn't expect to cause such a big commotion. She wanted to try to stop them, but she soon realized it was useless. These stones were sometimes obedient and sometimes disobedient. If they really made a scene, she couldn't do anything about it. Then it became like this. The countless intersecting spaces under the illusionary god ocean were almost all frozen. There was no longer that oppressive aura around. In short, it was very stable. Unfortunately, there was a barrier at the bottom that trapped Diwu Zhangzi. She tried to get closer, but she couldn't. It was also the only area that the 3,000 god territories hadn't touched yet. As for the other places around, Chu Liwei could even feel the slightest ripple in her surroundings. Shangguanyu. Nan Jinshu's voice came from above, sounding flustered and exasperated. Chu Liwei looked up and waved her hand. Patriarch Nan, what a coincidence. Nan Jinshu's breath was stuck in his chest. Coincidence? Who's so coincidental with you? Why are you here? Nan Jinshu came to Chu Liwei and questioned her coldly. Chu Liwei smiled. If Patriarch Nan can be here, why can't I? Nan Jinshu snorted. I came with the permission of the first divine envoy. Of course, I'm different from you. You barged in here and used your god territory to forcibly take away the power that originally belonged to me. Shangguanyu, you've gone too far. If they were in the divine ruins realm, Nan Jinshu wouldn't have the confidence and courage to speak to Chu Liwei like this. After all, the entire Nen family was almost destroyed by Chu Liwei. He was deeply afraid and traumatized by her. But this was the illusionary god ocean. How could someone like her, who didn't have a bloodline totem, be compared to him? Nan Jinshu's plan had been going well, and everything had been going smoothly. Of course, he was upset that someone had interrupted him halfway. Therefore he spoke very harshly. Chu Liwei raised her brows slightly, and her gaze quickly swept past the seal in his hands before she smiled lightly. Nan family head, I really didn't mean it. How could I have thought that Nan family head, you actually couldn't even snatch a pile of stones? Nan Jinshu choked and almost spat out a mouthful of blood. How is this a pile of rocks? These were clearly deity domains. Furthermore, these divine territories were all under her control. How could she possibly escape responsibility? Chu Liwei turned around and waved at a rock not far away. All right, time to go back. The rock retreated, and the light around it became even more resplendent. At the same time, it began to devour the surrounding power at an even more astonishing rate. Chu Liwei sighed and shrugged at Nan Jinshu. Nan family head, you saw it too. They really didn't listen to me. If she had a choice, she wouldn't have made such a big deal out of it. Nan Jinshu's eyes twitched violently. For a moment he felt deeply humiliated. However, Chu Liu's expression was so sincere that he couldn't think of anything to refute her. Only then did he realize that the space here seemed to be under Chu Liu's control. It was no longer a threat to her. The illusionary god ocean. Wasn't the illusionary god ocean extremely dangerous? Why was it suddenly different when it came to Chu Liwei? He had relied on the first divine envoy's seal to barely protect himself. What about her? She relied on these rocks. Nan Jinshu couldn't help but look at the seal in his hand. He suddenly felt that all his previous plans were a joke. As long as Chu Liwei was here, he wouldn't be able to continue cultivating. He gritted his teeth and said, "The first divine envoy will know. The first divine envoy will definitely find out what you've done. Let's see how you explain yourself then." Chu Liwei nodded in agreement. That's great. I'd like to meet him too. Nan Jinshu's chest tightened. He felt that if he continued talking to Chu Liwei, he would die of anger first. Nan Jinshu turned to leave when he realized that he couldn't get an explanation. He wanted to see how the first divine envoy would punish her. Wait! Chu Luiyue suddenly called out to him. Nan family head, there's something I don't understand. Can you explain it to me? Nan Jinshu said impatiently without turning his head. Go ahead and find out what you want to know. You're very capable anyway, aren't you? But the next moment, Chu Luiyue's figure moved, and she appeared in front of him, blocking his path. Nan family head, why are you in such a hurry to leave? It doesn't matter if you leave earlier or later. It won't affect your cultivation too much. Chu Luiyue said with a smile. Nan Jinshu's lips moved, but when he saw the Star Spectre sword appear in her hand, he swallowed his words and changed the topic. What do you want to know? Chu Luiyue's lips curled up. It's not a big deal. I'm just curious. Where did you get this seal? Nan Jinshu was stunned. He said coldly, the first divine envoy gave it to me personally, of course. That's right. Why would he give it to you? Chu Luiyue nodded and took another step forward. The divine envoys have asked to meet him many times, but the first divine envoy has refused to meet him. However, Nan family head, you're very capable. Not only did you meet him, you even got this seal. I've been curious about this. Please tell me more about it. Nan Jinshu's eyes widened. What did you say? Shengguan Yu, what are you dreaming about? Why should I tell you? This was the biggest secret of the Nan family and Family E. It also involved the palace of the illusory god. How could he tell Chu Luiyue? Chu Luiyue smiled kindly. I'm just a little curious. Why won't you tell me? Nan Jinshu ignored her and was about to leave. A piercingly cold sword chi pierced over, brushing past the top of his head. Nan Jinshu's movements suddenly froze as a chill ran down his spine. At this moment, he clearly realized that it was extremely easy for Chu Luiyue to kill him if she wanted to. Shengguan Yu, don't you dare. Swoosh. A cold blade was pressed against his neck. Chu Luiyue chuckled. Do you think I'd dare? Nan Jinshu's body tensed. He swallowed hard and sneered. It's good that you know. It's related to you anyway. Chu Luiyue was stunned. Then, she heard Nan Jinshu say word by word. You have the first two pieces of music scores. You're quite capable. Unfortunately, you won't get the last one no matter what. Chu Luiyue was shocked. Nan Jinshu knew where the third piece of music score was. Where is the third one? She asked coldly. Before Nan Jinshu could speak, the seal in his hand suddenly shone brightly. Chapter 23:12. A scarlet light flew out and enveloped Nan Jinshu. A terrifying pressure descended upon him, encircling his entire body and forming a barrier. Clang. A wave of energy repelled Chu Luiyue's star darkness sword. Chu Luiyue was shocked and quickly retreated. However, the star darkness sword couldn't completely avoid the attack. The sword trembled, almost numbing Chu Luiyue's hand. Did the first divine emissary attack? Chu Luiyue frowned. He suppressed the surging aura in his chest and looked at Nan Jinshu. Nan Jinshu was overjoyed. First divine emissary. The seal flew out of his hand and floated in the air. An endless amount of pressure and power spread out from it. Chu Luiyue narrowed his eyes. The seal contained the first divine emissary's aura. No wonder Nan Jinshu was so confident. First divine emissary. Did you see that? This Shengguan Yu is extremely bold. Not only did she barge into the illusionary god sea, but she also turned this place upside down. She even forced me to tell her the whereabouts of the third zither score. Nan Jinshu was excited. He felt like he had found a savior and hurriedly told him everything that Chu Luiyue had done. She's so bold and arrogant. She doesn't care about you at all. She doesn't respect the illusionary god palace at all. First divine emissary, you must punish her severely as a warning to others. Nan Jinshu couldn't be blamed for being so angry. After all, a sword was pressed against his neck just a moment ago. His life was hanging by a thread. Now that he finally had a chance to counterattack, he naturally wouldn't let it go. He wanted nothing more than to ask the first divine emissary to kill Chu Luiyue personally. However, in the next moment, A cold and deep voice rang out from the talisman, causing Nanjin Shu to be stunned. Nanjin Shu, what did you say to her just now? Every word was cold and deep, like an interrogation. His tone was filled with undisguised anger. Nanjin Shu was stunned. What did he say just now? No, he told Chu Liwei about the third score. His entire body was covered in cold sweat. First messenger, I didn't do it on purpose. Sheng Guanyu has been forcing me. This matter was extremely confidential, which was why the first divine emissary was willing to meet him and gave him the qualifications to cultivate in the illusionary god sea. If it was any other day, Nanjin Shu wouldn't have mentioned it so casually. But just now, Chu Liyue's sword was on his neck. He was angry and scared. In a moment of impulse, he actually blurted it out. He didn't expect the first oracle to know about it. Chu Liyue narrowed his eyes when he heard the voice. This voice was very unfamiliar, but the tone, it was strangely familiar. He felt like he had heard it somewhere before. Nanjin Shusheng was afraid that he would be punished. He quickly shifted the blame to Chu Liyue. First divine emissary, if she hadn't forced me, I wouldn't have said these things. Furthermore, the first two pieces of music are indeed with her. She had broken so many taboos. Just this alone should be enough to punish her, right? However, the first divine emissary didn't seem to listen to Nanjin Shu. Both of you, leave the illusionary god sea immediately. From now on, you are not allowed to come back. Nanjin Shu was stunned. First divine emissary, what do you mean? He didn't mind. He had made a mistake and should be punished. But what about Chu Liyue? First divine emissary, she. Before he could finish his sentence, the first divine emissary's voice came from the talisman again. Nanjin Shu, do you have any objections? His voice was very soft, but it made Nanjin Shu shiver. He hurriedly said, I wouldn't dare. No matter how unhappy he was with this result, he knew that he couldn't show it. Wasn't going against the first divine emissary suicidal. No matter how much Nanjin Shu hated Chu Liyue and how much he wanted her to die here, he still had a brain. The first divine emissary clearly didn't intend to kill her. Other than chasing her out of the illusionary god sea, there wasn't any other punishment. Perhaps it was because he was afraid of the two scores? After all, the talisman had already recognized her as its master. It wasn't feasible to take it by force. Nanjin Shu thought about it and felt that this was the only answer. He suppressed the surging emotions in his heart and cupped his fists. Jin Shu will leave now. After that, he gave Chu Liyue a deep look before heading up to the sea. However, the talisman didn't leave with him. It just hung there quietly. It was only a few steps away from Chu Liyue. Chu Liyue stared at the talisman and suddenly asked, First divine emissary, have we met before? The talisman didn't answer. Several rays of red light swirled around, stirring up waves. Swoosh. The scattered stones finally returned to Chu Liyue. Chu Liyue had a thought and put them all back into her universe ring. Then, the talisman quietly dissipated. It transformed into a crimson light that covered everything below. Chu Liyue's eyes narrowed. This red light was exactly the same as the Red Moon Desert. She clenched her fists and finally turned to leave. But the sound of water splashing attracted the attention of the people on the silver bridge. Countless pairs of eyes immediately gathered in that direction. They saw a figure rushing out of the water and heading in their direction. Nanjin Shu? Why is he the one coming out? Isn't he supposed to cultivate in the illusionary god sea? It hasn't even been a day. Is it over? His expression doesn't look right. After Nanjin Shu came out, he was shocked to see so many people gathered on the silver bridge. Those gazes made him extremely embarrassed. However, he couldn't go back now. He could only brace himself and go forward. Soon he arrived on the silver bridge as well. The moment his feet touched the ground, he didn't stop and immediately headed toward the heavenly gate above him. There was no expression on his face. He exuded a dangerous and cold aura that kept people at arm's length. Anyone with eyes could see that he was in an extremely bad mood at this moment. The people around him quieted down. However, not everyone was wary of him. For example, Mu Hongyu. She quickly arrived in front of Nan Jinshu and stopped him. Nan Jinshu, where's Lu Yu? Nan Jinshu knew who she was talking about. His expression immediately turned ugly. What does it have to do with me? If you want to know, why don't you go and see for yourself? He hated Chu Luiyue to the core. Even hearing her name made him grit his teeth. Mu Hongyu raised her chin. How troublesome. You're all in the illusionary god's sea anyway. What's wrong with me asking? Everything had been fine earlier. However, for some reason, she suddenly couldn't see what was going on below. She was worried. Of course, she had to ask Nin Jinshu about it. Suddenly, she narrowed her eyes and asked curiously, why is there a sword wound on your neck? Chapter 23:13. It would have been better if Nan Jinshu hadn't mentioned it. In fact, it was only a very shallow wound. The skin was slightly broken and a faint trace of blood seeped out. It would recover in 2 or 3 days. However, it constantly reminded Nan Jinshu of the humiliation he had suffered in front of Chu Luiyue. He raised his hand to touch his neck and snorted coldly. If you don't want any trouble, you'd better leave now. Otherwise, I can't guarantee that there won't be more injuries on your body. He was clearly threatening Nan Jinshu. He couldn't defeat Chu Luiyue, but it wouldn't be a problem for him to deal with Mu Hongyu, who was only a high god. However, Mu Hongyu didn't care at all. Mu Hongyu blinked when she saw the man's angry expression. Patriarch Nan, why are you so angry? Could it be that Lu Yu is the one who gave you this injury? Nan Jinshu was even more furious. He waved his hand and formed a sharp blade with his divine power. It went straight for Mu Hongyu. The two of them were only a step away from each other. Even an honorable god of the same level might not be able to dodge his sudden attack in time, let alone a high god. Swish! The sharp blade pierced through Mu Hongyu's chest. The crowd exclaimed. However, the next moment, they saw that Mu Hongyu had disappeared. That was clearly just her afterimage. Nan Jinshu's heart had just been filled with joy when he saw this scene and was taken aback. Then, a hand gently patted his shoulder from behind. Patriarch Nan, you're not strong enough. Nan Jinshu's hair stood on end. He immediately turned around. Mu Hongyu was standing behind him with a smile. How did you? Before he could ask, Mu Hongyu threw a punch. It landed on Nan Jinshu's face. Bang! With a dull thud, Nan Jinshu felt dizzy and stumbled a few steps back, almost falling to the ground. When Mu Hongyu threw this punch, it affected the power of the surrounding space and created a great pressure on Nan Jinshu. That was why he was able to catch Nan Jinshu off guard so easily. Nan Jinshu felt a dull pain all over his face. Something was flowing out from his nose and the corner of his mouth. He wiped it off and looked down. The blood was thick and red. His hands began to tremble slightly. The surrounding onlookers revealed strange expressions when they saw this. What was going on? Wasn't Mu Hongyu a high deity? After exchanging blows with Nan Jinshu, not only was he not injured, but he even managed to beat Nan Jinshu to such a state? Mu Hongyu clicked her tongue and shook her head. Nan family head, you don't seem to be in a good condition. Why do you have to force yourself? I'm just asking you a question. Can't you just answer me honestly? Now, you've added new wounds to your old wounds. Look, what do you want? Nan Jinshu was about to explode from anger. Mu Hongyu. Mu Hongyu touched her ear. Hey, I'm listening. You. At this moment, another figure dashed out of the illusionary god ocean. Shengguan Yu is out. Someone in the crowd exclaimed. Mu Hongyu quickly turned around. When she saw that it was Chu Luiyue, she heaved a sigh of relief and waved happily. Chu Luiyue was also very fast. He arrived at the silver bridge in the blink of an eye. Mu Hongyu hurried forward and looked Chu Luiyue up and down. Lu Yu, are you all right? Just now, a mysterious and powerful force had suddenly appeared and blocked her perception, causing her to be quite worried. When she saw that Nan Jinshu had returned first and was injured, she was even more worried about what had happened below. Chu Luiyue smiled. I'm fine. Mu Hongyu heaved a sigh of relief after confirming that she was really not injured. That's good, that's good. Chu Luiwei looked up and saw Nanjin Shu covering his nose with blood all over his face. He raised his eyebrows in surprise. What happened to the Nan family master? He had only arrived a little earlier than her. Why was he injured again? Mu Hongyu coughed. I asked him about your situation just now. Not only did he refuse to tell me, but he even wanted to hit me. I had no choice but to retaliate. She sounded quite aggrieved. Everyone was speechless. Nan Jinshu's forehead twitched. This Mu Hongyu was really good at distorting the truth. Upon hearing this, Chu Liuyue's expression turned cold. Nan Jinshu, did you attack Hongyu just now? Nan Jinshu could not deny it. He gritted his teeth and said, so what if I did? But she's not. Before he could say the word, injured, Chu Luiwei quickly went forward and harshly kicked Nan Jinshu's chest. Nan Jinshu instinctively wanted to block it. However, he was not as fast as Chu Luiwei. There was a flash of light. Chu Luiwei kicked Nan Jinshu with his long legs and accurately hit him. Bam! Nan Jinshu did not even have time to set up a barrier before he was sent flying. Everyone hurriedly moved aside. Nan Jinshu fell onto the silver bridge with a loud thud. He spat out a mouthful of blood. His face was pale. When Chu Luiwei attacked, she specially summoned her divine body. Hence, this attack almost took half of Nan Jinshu's life. Everyone retreated further when they saw that. Chu Luiwei did not hold back. If they continued to fight, it would not be good for them to bleed. No one was worried about Nan Jinshu's condition. On one hand, most of the cultivators in the illusionary god palace were focused on cultivation. Most of them were not close to each other. On the other hand, Nanjin Shu had entered the illusionary god palace immediately after he arrived. He did not have much contact with them, let alone anything else. I didn't attack you just now because you're the first divine envoy. However, that doesn't mean I'm a pushover. Chu Luiwei dusted his clothes and said mildly. Everyone was shocked when they heard that. The first divine envoy. What happened down there that involved the first divine envoy? Next time, before you attack, please consider whether you have the ability to do so. Otherwise, if you fail and get beaten up, where will you hide your face in the future? Nanjin Shu was so angry that he could not speak. He spat out a few more mouthfuls of blood. He was already weaker than Chu Luiwei. Now that he was beaten up by Chu Luiwei and Mu Hongyu, he was even more miserable. Many people looked at each other and secretly exchanged glances. Chu Luiwei's words were really interesting. Nanjin Shu had entered the illusionary god palace immediately, met the first divine envoy, and obtained permission to cultivate in the illusionary god ocean. Everyone thought that the first divine envoy would take good care of him. However, why did Chu Luiwei not seem to be worried about causing trouble for himself after beating up Nanjin Shu? Chapter 23:14. Chu Luiwei then turned to Mu Hongyu. Hongyu, let's go back. Mu Hongyu immediately replied, okay. Then, the two of them really went straight to the divine gate. Mu Hongyu even wrinkled her nose at Nanjin Shu when they walked past him. So that's all there is to a supreme god powerhouse. Although she was only a supreme god now, she had broken through to the initial realization realm. Her combat power was on par with a supreme god powerhouse. Nanjin Shu choked. His vision turned black and he almost fainted from anger. However, the two of them couldn't be bothered with him. They went straight to the divine gate and stepped through it. Their figures quickly disappeared behind the flickering barrier, leaving behind a group of dumbfounded people standing in the same place. They really went back? Just like that? Speaking of which, Shangguanyu stayed in the illusionary god ocean for a few hours. How did she come out unscathed? That's not all. She even beat Nanjin Shu up. The first messenger is in charge of the illusionary god ocean. Logically speaking, he should know what happened here, right? Why didn't he punish Shangguanyu? The weird thing is, I thought Nanjin Shu really had the first messenger as his backer, but it seems like that's not the case. If the first messenger really had the intention to support Nanjinshu, this wouldn't have happened. All sorts of discussions entered Nanjinshu's ears, making him very frustrated. Of course, he wanted to know why this was happening. Even if he couldn't kill her for the zither score, there were many ways to punish her. But none. Chu Luiyue was so presumptuous and had done so many outrageous things in the illusionary god ocean. The first messenger didn't punish her other than ordering her to stay away from the illusionary god ocean. Nanjinshu couldn't figure it out. That person wasn't easy to talk to. Otherwise, the other messengers wouldn't be so afraid of him. But this time, it was really strange. Nanjinshu forced himself to stand up. No matter what, he couldn't stay here any longer. He had to return to the illusionary god palace as soon as possible. Chu Luiyue and Mu Hongyu crossed the barrier and headed towards their residence. Mu Hongyu looked back and asked curiously, "What's the matter? Luyu, did you really leave that wound on Nanjinshu's neck? You guys actually started fighting under the illusionary god sea?" Chu Luiyue pondered for a moment, then said, "Not really. It was just an exchange of pointers, but they didn't fight. To be precise, she had single-handedly attacked Nanjinshu. Unfortunately, the first oracle had arrived too quickly and did not have time to ask about the whereabouts of the third score. After that, it would probably be difficult for him to ask again. Fortunately, this trip wasn't completely fruitless." Mu Hongyu nodded in understanding. "That's right. Originally, I was watching the illusionary god sea very well. In the end, I don't know why, but it suddenly stopped. It was as if something was blocking it." Chu Luiyue smiled. "Since the first divine envoy has made his move, it will naturally be difficult for you to investigate." Mu Hongyu's almond-shaped eyes widened. Did the first divine envoy really go? Why didn't I see him? He didn't come in person. The seal that Nanjinshu brought over contained a trace of the first divine envoy's aura. He came out when he sensed what Nanjinshu and I were doing. I knew that the power was very strong. Mu Hongyu finally figured out this problem and understood a lot more. "I've long heard that the first divine envoy is very powerful. It seems like it's true. He only sealed a trace of his aura in the seal, and it was already so powerful that it could easily cover the entire illusionary god sea. It was hard to imagine how powerful he was. That's why I wanted to meet him. Unfortunately, this kind of opportunity is hard to come by." Chu Luiyue was not only amazed by the first oracle's power, but she also wanted to know something. She wanted to know if she had any history with the first oracle. At first, she didn't take it to heart, but later, that familiar feeling lingered in her heart. The strangest thing was that after Nanjinshu left, she asked if they had met before, but the first oracle didn't answer. He didn't admit it, but he didn't deny it either. Of course, it was also possible that he didn't care to answer Chu Luiyue's question. But for some reason, Chu Luiyue didn't think that was very likely. She raised her head and looked into the distance at the towering illusory god palace. She would go in eventually. Nanjinshu returned to the illusionary god palace in a fluster. He had just returned to his residence when he saw someone waiting for him at the door. He was shocked. "The eighth divine envoy? Why you here?" Shu Jing smiled. "I'm here to wait for you." As she spoke, she glanced at Nanjinshu, but she was not surprised at all. In fact, she had already known about what had happened outside 15 minutes ago. Nanjinshu was instantly embarrassed and lowered her head subconsciously as she was being scrutinized by her. "I wonder why the eighth divine envoy has suddenly come here?" Shu Jing didn't answer his question. Instead, she sighed. "It seems that Shangguan Yu is more arrogant and despotic than the rumors." Nanjinshu was furious when he heard this. He let down his guard against Shu Jing. He wiped the blood from the corner of his lips. "She has always been like this. Master Nan, didn't you take the first oracle's seal to the illusionary god ocean? Why did Shangguan Yu bully you like this? Is she looking down on you, or does she not care about the first oracle at all?" Shu Jing asked purposely. Offending Nanjinshu wasn't a big deal, but offending the first oracle was a serious crime. She thought that Nanjinshu would be furious and would complain to the first divine emissary. However, Nanjinshu's expression changed several times before he finally said, "Don't worry, Mississippi." Finally, he said, "Eighth Divine Envoy, did you come here just to tell me this?" Shu Jing was stunned. Nanjinshu's reaction didn't seem right. While she was thinking, Nanjinshu continued. "The first Divine Envoy has already made his decision. Naturally, we can only listen to him," said the first Divine Envoy. Shu Jing's heart skipped a beat. She finally realized that the first oracle already knew about this. But the current situation was his choice. The first oracle didn't punish Chu Luiyue. Shu Jing couldn't believe it, but Nanjinshu didn't want to talk about it anymore. Eighth oracle, if there's nothing else, of course there is. Shu Jing quickly reacted and suppressed the shock and confusion in her heart. The sixth oracle wants to see Master Nan. Nanjinshu was stunned. The sixth oracle? Shu Jing nodded and smiled. "Master Nan, please follow me." This didn't give Nanjinshu the right to refuse. Digression, 6 p.m. Chapter 23:15. At this moment, Chu Luiyue and Mu Hongyu returned to their residence. After the two entered the room together, Chu Luiyue found a pen and paper and drew the spatial layout under the illusionary god C for Mu Hongyu. This was actually very difficult. Under the illusionary god C, countless spaces intertwined and overlapped, and were constantly changing. Even 1/10 of it could not be represented by the drawing on the paper. Fortunately, after the stones rolled out, they each froze a part of the space with the divine realm, which helped Chu Luiyue a lot. In addition, Mu Hongyu stood on the silver bridge and watched for a long time, so she was aware of the situation under the illusionary god C. Therefore, she could understand it. After a while, Chu Luiyue finally stopped writing and handed over the map in her hand. Mu Hongyu took it and glanced at it. She was surprised. "Lu Yu, how do you know so much?" These were all invisible and intangible. Her control of space was not top-notch, so it was reasonable to say that she could not give such a map. Chu Luiyue was about to speak when she saw Chang Wanzhou come to the door with tea in his hand. She smiled and waved. "Little Zhou, come in." Chang Wanzhou walked in, came to Chu Luiyue's side, and poured her tea. It was the familiar taste of ginger tea. Chu Luiyue reached for the cup. The temperature was just right. She took a sip, and her lungs instantly warmed up. A unique fragrance with a hint of bitterness gradually diffused. Chu Luiyue narrowed her eyes comfortably, and her bright eyes almost curved into a crescent moon. Not to mention anything else, Xiao Zhou had always done well in these matters. However, he was now a god. It was really a waste of talent to serve her like this. Chu Luiyue held the tea and said, "Little Zhou, don't do these things in the future." Chang Wanzhou froze, and a trace of panic flashed in his eyes. "Master thinks I didn't do well?" Chu Luiyue hurriedly waved his hand. "Of course not. However, with your current status, doing this is really a waste of time and energy. These are only trivial matters. Master's matter is not a trivial matter." Chang Wanzhou pursed his lips and interrupted her, which was rare of him. Chu Luiyue was stunned. She looked up and saw his stubborn face. "How stubborn," Chu Luiyue sighed in her heart and could only say, "Then, just pretend I didn't say anything?" Chang Wanzhou gently nodded. A few strands of messy golden hair hung down from his forehead, covering the ripples in his eyes. Only his rose petal-like lips, which were slightly raised, revealed some of his emotions. Chu Luiyue helplessly held her forehead and smiled. Forget it. He could do whatever he wanted. Now that he had become a god, he was no longer as easily bullied as before. Chu Luiyue retracted his gaze and looked at Mu Hongyu. "Here's what happened." Then he told Mu Hongyu everything that had happened in the illusory god sea. Mu Hongyu was shocked and couldn't come back to her senses for a long time. So, your stones can suppress the space turbulence in the illusory god sea?" Chu Luiyue shook his head. "Strictly speaking, it's not suppression. At most, it's just temporary. After all, those are the divine realms of the great gods, and their power is limited." she could feel that there was an extremely shocking power in the illusory God Sea. It was not something she could resist at the moment. But at that time, this power had not erupted. Mu Hongyu was stunned for a while. Suddenly, she remembered something and asked in a low voice. What if it's the gravestone of the great gods? She knew the origin of the pile of stones. Chu Liwei had gone to the Godslayer mound and obtained them from the tombs of the great gods. According to Chu Liwei, there were not only tombs of the great gods, but also of the great gods. Hearing her say this, Chu Liwei was also dazed. I really didn't think about it before. When she went to the Godslayer mound, her strength was limited, so she only stayed in the tombs of the great gods for a while. As for the area of the great gods, she really didn't go there. Normally, the gravestone of the great gods should contain more power, but no one can guarantee that the situation there will be the same as the great gods' tombs. Chu Liwei murmured. Back then, these stones had taken the initiative to follow her, but who could be sure that the same thing would happen a second time? The great gods were much more powerful than the great gods. Mu Hongyu wrinkled her nose. If she could really bring back the gravestone of the great gods, then it wouldn't be a problem for Chu Liwei to deal with the Mirage God Ocean. Chu Liwei tapped her hand on the armrest and fell into deep thought. Mu Hongyu's words made sense. After all, she didn't expect these stones to choose to follow her. Maybe she should find some time to go to the Godslayer mound again? Once she succeeded, her battle prowess would rise to the extreme. Chu Liwei was tempted. The palace of the Mirage God. Nan Jinshu followed Shu Jing to the residence of the sixth oracle. As soon as he entered the courtyard, Nan Jinshu smelled a faint, bitter medicinal fragrance. He felt a little strange. The sixth oracle didn't seem to be a celestial physician. Why would there be a medicinal smell here? Shu Jing turned to look at him and said, "The sixth oracle came back recently. The sixth divine emissary has just returned from outside and is currently recuperating. You just have to answer whatever he asks later." Nan Jinshu immediately said, "Yes." Only then did Shu Jing step forward and knock on the door. "Sixth oracle, Patriarch Nan is here." A moment later, a hoarse voice came from inside. "Come in." Shu Jing gestured at Nan Jinshu with his chin. Nan Jinshu was startled and pointed at himself. "I'll go in alone? Won't the eighth oracle come with me?" Shu Jing smiled. "The sixth oracle wants to talk to Patriarch Nan in private. I won't disturb you." Nan Jinshu was a little nervous, but he nodded and went in. Shu Jing closed the door. Creak. Nan Jinshu felt inexplicably nervous as he listened. He had been here for a while, and this was the first time a oracle wanted to see him. "Nan Jinshu." The voice came from behind the screen. Nan Jinshu cupped his fists and bowed. "Greetings, sixth oracle. Are you sure the third music score is in the god-slaying tomb?" Nan Jinshu was stunned. At first, he found it strange that the sixth divine emissary knew about this. However, after thinking about it, he realized that the first divine emissary had already sent someone to investigate. He nodded. "Did you tell Shangguan Yu about this?" "Of course not." Nan Jinshu said hurriedly. "This is a serious matter. How would I dare to tell her about it?" "That's good. As long as you know what you're doing. Besides, I heard that she went to the illusionary god Ocean without permission." "Yes. This woman is very daring. Did the first oracle know about this?" Chapter 23:16. Nan Jinshu paused and said hesitantly, "This counts, but it doesn't. At that time, I brought the seal of the first divine envoy to the illusionary god Sea. When I clashed with Shangguan Yu, the aura of the first divine envoy gushed out from the seal and chased us out of the illusionary god Sea." "The first oracle didn't show up?" "No." Nan Jinshu was puzzled. "The first oracle is in charge of the illusionary god Sea. Even if he doesn't show up personally, he can easily find out everything that happens in the illusionary god Sea. Besides, such a small matter shouldn't require the first oracle to make a move, right? Actually, this matter might be a big deal to him and Chu Liwei, but it was definitely nothing to the first oracle. The illusionary god sea was boundless and vast. At most, the two of them were just messing around. Why would the first oracle make a special trip for this matter? Just the seal alone was enough to solve the problem. When you went to meet the first oracle, did you see him in person? The sixth oracle suddenly asked. Nan Jinshu hesitated. Outsiders thought that he had entered the courtyard and must have seen the first oracle. But in reality, he had just stood outside the door and said a few words. He didn't even see that person's shadow. He didn't dare to hide anything in front of the sixth oracle. As expected, the sixth oracle murmured as if he had expected this, but he also seemed a little unwilling. Nan Jinshu almost thought that he was hallucinating. Why did it sound like the sixth oracle wanted the first oracle to appear personally? And he seemed to have expected that the first oracle wouldn't meet him? You said that the first oracle came out to stop the two of you as soon as the conflict broke out? Nan Jinshu described the situation at that time. Of course, he added some details, but he didn't know that Emo Shirqian was completely uninterested behind the screen. What he wanted to know was the first oracle's attitude towards Chu Luiyue. What kind of place is the illusionary god sea? In the past 10,000 years, 90% of the cultivators who trespassed there died and were buried at the bottom of the sea. As for the remaining 10%, even if they were lucky enough to escape, they would inevitably be severely punished. Even if they didn't die, they would be half dead. However, when it comes to her, it's different. He sneered coldly with a hint of mockery. Nan Jinshu felt a little uncomfortable when he heard this voice. But at this time, he didn't have time to think about this. His focus was the same as the sixth divine envoys. Sixth divine envoy, do you also find this matter strange? I originally thought that the first god's emissary wouldn't let Shangguan Yu off the hook so easily, but who would have thought that he wouldn't be punished at all? What do you think the first oracle is thinking? The thoughts of the first divine envoy are not something that we can guess. This, Nan Jinshu frowned. He could hear that the sixth divine emissary seemed to be very concerned about this matter, but perhaps because he was afraid, he did not continue to speak. All right, you can go back. Nan Jinshu was at a loss when the sixth divine emissary suddenly asked him to leave. Was he letting him go just like that? Could it be that the sixth emissary had asked him to come here just to ask about this? But the sixth divine envoy, get out. That voice carried an unquestionable pressure. Nan Jinshu's heart skipped a beat. He didn't dare to ask any more questions and quickly retreated. Mu Hongyu left with the map that Chu Luiyue had drawn. She still needed to go back and take a closer look at the situation below the illusionary god ocean. Also, she had to break through to the Mahayana realm as soon as possible. After Mu Hongyu left, Chu Luiyue asked Xiao Zhou to leave as well. She sat alone in her room to think. Now, there were a lot of things that she needed to solve. She hadn't finished her star path yet. This was the fastest and most suitable way for her to enter the illusionary god palace openly. Su Li had been in the illusionary god palace for a while and would carefully investigate the situation from time to time. But after all, she was under the watchful eyes of the god's emissaries. There were many things that Su Li did not dare to go overboard with, so the information that she could find was limited. Until now, there were still no clues as to the whereabouts of Dugu Mabao and Lan Xiao. Chu Luiyue could basically conclude that the two of them were trapped in an extremely secretive location in the illusionary god palace. It would be impossible to rely on Su Li alone to find them. She still had to go in. At the same time, the third Guqin score was also very important to her. She had to think of a way to get information from Nan Jinshu. If she guessed correctly, the third Guqin score was still in the Divine Ruins world. And the two gods' emissaries, Jiao Long and Shi Yan, who had left earlier, were probably looking for the last Guqin score. Unfortunately, the two of them had already disappeared without a trace, leaving no clues behind. And Diwu Zhangzi, who was trapped in the illusionary god ocean, what kind of person was the first god's emissary? A low and pleasant voice sounded. Chu Luiyue turned around and saw Rong Xiu walking in. He came in front of Chu Luiyue. Seeing her frown, he reached out and smoothed her brows. What are you thinking about? Why are you so tired? Chu Liwei held his hand and rubbed her face against the back of his hand. It's still those. Rong Xiu smiled and hugged her. He leaned over and kissed her hair. Tell me about it. Miss Shangguan. I have something to do. Zhao, who had just walked to the door, was originally smiling. But when he saw the cold and noble figure hugging Chu Liwei in the room, he was shocked and stunned. Why was she here? Chapter 23:17. The most important thing was that he seemed to have come at the wrong time. When the two people in the room heard the voice, they both looked outside the door. Rong Xiu raised his eyebrows slightly. This is... Ming's heart trembled violently. He originally wanted to run away, but it was obviously too late now. If he wanted to go in, he really couldn't move his legs. Chu Liwei raised the corners of his lips slightly. Lord Ming, why are you here? Please come in. He didn't dare to disobey Madam's orders. Silently holding his breath, he walked stiffly and braced himself to enter the house. Chu Liwei stood up. Rong Xiu, let me introduce you. This is Lord Ming of Zhenbao Pavilion. He usually treats me very well and has helped me a lot before. Rong Xiu's thin scarlet lips curled into a smile. I see. Lord Ming, I've heard a lot about you. Ming Shu's legs went soft. He barely restrained his urge to kneel down and bow. He forced a smile. You flatter me. I've heard a lot about you too. Pa. Rong Xiu laughed. Since Lord Ming has taken good care of you, as her husband, I naturally have to thank you properly. Ming Shu repeatedly said that he didn't dare. But it's just a small matter. It's not worth mentioning. At this moment, he was extremely grateful to the second master. If it weren't for that person's reminder, he wouldn't know when he had offended Madam. How could he stand in front of this person and talk to him like this? Chu Liwei raised his hand. Lord Ming, please sit down. You can talk slowly. How could Ming Shu dare to sit down? He coughed, waved his hand, and said, No need, no need. I'm here today because I have something to tell you. I'll leave after that. Chu Liwei looked at Ming Shu and felt that he was a little strange today. He seemed very nervous. It must be a big matter for you to personally solve the case. Please speak. Ming Shu tried his best to make himself look as calm and composed as he usually did. He said, It's like this. I came here this time to ask you if you've been in contact with Mu Yafeng recently. Chu Liwei was stunned. Mu Yafeng? What? You frowned. Actually, it's nothing much. It's just that Mu Yafeng has continued to walk the star path since yesterday. Furthermore, in a short span of one day, he had broken through 3 great Grandmaster Xian formations. I thought it was a little strange, so I thought I'd come over to ask you. Lord Ji thinks that I revealed the contents of the mythical flame diagram to her? Chu Liwei immediately understood. Please don't misunderstand. Zhao hurriedly explained, I just feel that this matter is really strange, so I wanted to ask you for confirmation. After all, those Xian formations were extremely difficult to decipher. Previously, she didn't make any progress for such a long time, but now she's suddenly improved by leaps and bounds. Chu Liwei nodded in understanding. What Lord Ji said makes sense. Previously, Senior Xiao Ran had also said that he had spent several years on those great Grandmaster-level profound formations before he had barely comprehended them. Originally, according to his speculation, Mu Yafeng should also need a long time to decipher this Xian formation. Previously, she was busy with the illusory god Si, so she didn't know that Mu Yafeng had made a move again. Now that she heard it, she also felt that it was very strange. The mythical flame diagram is a treasure of Treasure Pavilion. When I agreed to help copy it, I already knew the rules. I would never easily reveal it to outsiders. I didn't even reveal it to my subordinates. Lord Ming Shu, you can rest assured about this. Yu hurriedly said, Of course I believe in your character. I have no intention of doubting you. Heavens! He was really just curious, so he came over to ask. Who knew that he would bump into this person? Wasn't this suspecting that there was something wrong with Madam? Even if he was given 10 more guts, He wouldn't dare to do this. If he had known that this person was here, he would never have stepped into this courtyard. Chu Luiyue smiled. I know that Lord Yu has no ill intentions. Actually, it's not just you. I also feel that it's a little strange. Mu Yafeng's talent is not bad, but with her own strength, it is indeed impossible for her to decipher 3 Grandmaster Xian formations in such a short time. Chu Luiyue's words were tactful. In fact, it should be said that it was absolutely impossible. If she had this ability, she wouldn't have dragged her feet on the star passage for so many years. In the eyes of many people in the illusory God Palace, Mu Yafeng was already a rare genius. But in Chu Luiyue's opinion, but it was fine. Ming Shu heaved a sigh of relief and said, not only that. She hasn't finished yet. She's still on the star passage. When I came here just now, I passed by and took a few glances. There was a bit of an irresistible force. Chu Luiyue was a little surprised. You mean, she plans to directly finish the star passage and enter the illusory God Palace? Ming Shu paused. It's hard to say, but if her performance is still like this, then it might really work. Chu Luiyue frowned slightly. In fact, she didn't care much about Mu Yafeng. But this matter was really strange. Otherwise, she wouldn't have made a special trip. I'm here today mainly to talk about this matter. It's up to you how you think. Ming Shu said. Chu Luiyue nodded. Thank you for reminding me, Lord Yu. Ming Shu waved his hand. Then, if there's nothing else, I'll leave first. There are still some things to deal with in the treasure pavilion. Hearing this, Chu Luiyue didn't ask him to stay. I'll send you off. No need, no need. I took the liberty to disturb the two of you. I'll leave now. How dare he really let the two of them send him off? As he spoke, he walked outside. Take care, Lord Yu. Rong Xiu said lightly. Ming Shu staggered, but a figure suddenly appeared in front of him. He steadied himself and looked up. Suddenly, the corner of his eyes twitched. Yen Qing stood with his sword in his arms. There was no expression on his handsome and cold face. He just looked at him quietly. Yu quickly swallowed the rest of his words, nodded slightly, and hurried away. For some reason, his footsteps became faster. Almost in the blink of an eye, he had already opened the gate of the courtyard and slipped away. In such a hurry. Chu Luiyue looked at Yu's back and muttered in a low voice. The person he just mentioned, is she the one who asked you for the mythical flame diagram? Rong Xiu tilted his head and asked. Chu Luiyue nodded thoughtfully. That's her. However, based on my understanding of her, she shouldn't be able to do such a thing. Even if she went back to cultivate in seclusion for a while, she shouldn't have advanced by leaps and bounds. The 7th oracle values her very much. I don't know if she went to consult him. Rong Xiu raised his eyebrows slightly and said lightly. The 7th oracle really doesn't have good taste. Chapter 23:18. His tone was light and indifferent, extremely natural. Chu Luiyue glanced at him, wrinkled her nose, and smiled. There aren't many people who dare to say that the 7th divine emissary has no foresight. The divine emissaries had a very high status in the illusory God Palace. Many people would be extra careful when talking about them, let alone such a straightforward judgment. Rong Xiu bent his finger and lightly scratched her nose. Am I wrong? He's a Xian master himself. It's impossible that he can't see my Yu's talent. Chu Luiyue shrugged and sighed. Isn't it because you don't have a bloodline totem? From the first day she came here, she deeply understood how much contempt and ridicule she would face without a bloodline totem. Rong Xiu's eyes narrowed slightly as his finger lightly brushed across her forehead. Chu Luiyue's heart moved. She leaned closer and whispered, Rong Xiu, the infinite divine dial, can only test people with bloodline power? Rong Xiu looked at her. After a moment he said, Of course. Bang. A stream of light flew up and quickly bloomed into an extremely brilliant Xian formation. Mu Yafeng looked up with unconcealable excitement in her eyes. The 4th one. This was already the 4th Xian formation she had cracked in a row on the Star Road this time. And it only took her less than 2 days. Not far behind her, many people were watching. Seeing that she had successfully cracked another Xian formation, the crowd instantly became restless. What's wrong with Mu Yafeng? Why did she suddenly become so powerful? The further she goes, the more complicated the Xian formation is. I remember that she was trapped in a Xian formation for a long time and couldn't crack it in the end, so she had no choice but to give up. How long has it been? She's back again and her progress is so smooth. Her talent has always been outstanding. Maybe she suddenly had an epiphany. If this continues, she can really comprehend all the Xian formations and officially enter the illusory god palace, right? I thought it would be Shangguan Yu. Ha! What a joke! Shangguan Yu is very powerful, but she doesn't have a bloodline totem. It won't be her turn, right? That's true, but other than that, she's really powerful. Didn't you guys hear that she went to the illusory god ocean and came back safe and sound? She even beat Nanjinshu. If she didn't have the confidence, would she dare to do that? Mu Yafeng was in a good mood when she heard the envy and admiration of the people in front of her. However, the name that appeared later caused her eyes to turn cold. It was just because he had some talent that he dared to act so recklessly. I heard she was because she made demands of herself is the second divine emissary of God to the illusory god. She is really arrogant. The second oracle could tolerate her once or twice, but it was hard to say what would happen if she did it too many times. Mu Yafeng shook her head, dispelled the messy thoughts in her mind, and continued forward. This time, no matter what, she had to complete the star path and enter the illusory god palace. In the courtyard, Rong Xiu and Chu Luiwei sat facing each other. A translucent chessboard floated between them. On it, the two chess pieces were fighting fiercely. Chu Luiwei stared at the chessboard and rubbed her chin. Ever since she read the mythical flame diagram and officially broke through to the great Grandmaster realm, her Xian formation cultivation had improved greatly. But after fighting with Rong Xiu, she felt a deep sense of defeat. Now, no matter where she went, there was no way to reverse the situation. She was at the mercy of others. Master thither. Go there. An anxious voice came from behind her. Chu Luiwei looked back helplessly. Little Hachi, how many times have I told you not to speak while watching the game? Can't you just paint your nails in peace? Little Hachi pursed her red lips and waved her hand. How can I be at ease when Master can't win? Look, it's all messed up. Chu Luiwei. Are you complaining that your master is not good enough? Little Hachi narrowed her eyes and quickly smiled. Of course not. I'm doing this for your own good. Look, you've played with His Highness for so many years, but you've only won a few times. Chu Luiwei, I remember this clearly. I really don't need you to remind me. She raised her chin. You want me to go there? Little Hachi's eyes lit up. Sit. Then watch carefully. Sush. Chu Luiwei flicked her finger, and a piece condensed from divine power flew out and landed on the spot Little Hachi pointed out. Rong Xiu's eyes were calm as he placed a piece. It was as if a sword had slashed down and completely sealed Chu Luiwei's last path. Chu Luiwei spread her hands. Did you see it clearly? If we do as you say, it will only make your master die faster. Little Hachi shrank her neck guiltily. Ahem, master, I haven't been learning for long. Of course, I can't compare with you and His Highness. I promise I won't say anything next time. Chu Luiwei said. You said the same thing last time and the time before that. Little Hachi pursed her lips and made a sewing gesture. Chu Luiwei gently knocked her forehead. You won't remember it anyway. She was used to it. Little Hachi's eyes were filled with tears. She really wanted to help her master win. At this moment, Shijing walked in from outside. Chu Luiwei was a little surprised. Shijing, where did you go? She didn't see Shijing after returning from the illusionary god sea. Roy bowed to them one by one before explaining. Master, I went to the thunder pool. Chu Luiwei was slightly stunned. Isn't the thunder pool sealed? Now, there shouldn't be anyone in the illusionary god palace going there. Shijing chuckled. But I just went to the shore to take a look. I didn't do anything else. Chu Luiwei laughed. All the Tianlei in the thunder pool have been frozen. What's there to see? Shijing said. Nothing. Master, there are a lot of Tianlei in the thunder pool. The second oracle and the others only sealed the upper layer, but the lower ones are still fine. Chu Luiyue frowned slightly. Oh, how do you know? This matter was extremely confidential and hidden. Ordinary people definitely wouldn't be able to guess. Shijing paused. Just guessed? The Tianlei power below is still wandering around. If you stand close and take a closer look, you can see it. Chu Luiyue looked at him meaningfully. Shijing. Sigh. You. Chu Luiyue was about to speak when Sun Yi suddenly pushed open the door and came out. Master. Seeing that his expression was different from before, Chu Luiyue knew that something must have happened, so she immediately asked, What's wrong? Sun Yi came to her. Qi Han sent a message saying that they met Jiu Long and Shi Yan in the god-slaying tomb. What? Chu Luiyue was shocked and stood up. Because she was too shocked, she didn't notice that Sun Yi didn't call the two oracles but directly called them by their names. Chapter 23:19. God-slaying tomb? What are they doing there? Chu Luiyue had thought of many places, but she had never thought of the god-slaying tomb. A thought suddenly flashed through her mind. Could it be that the last Guqin score was in the god-slaying tomb? But that couldn't be right. Back then, she had finally gotten the second Guqin score from Senior Ah Jing in the god-slaying tomb. If the third one was there, how could he not know? Her brows were tightly knitted together. Rong Xiu asked, Did you just get the news? Sun Yi nodded. He could contact everyone in the 13U. After getting the news, he immediately came to Chu Luiyue. Of course, he knew how important the last Guqin score was to Chu Luiyue. Chu Luiyue pondered for a moment and suddenly thought of a question. Why is Qi Han in the god-slaying tomb? You just said them. Who else is with him? Sun Yi said, and Old Six. It seems that they went there to help Old Six break through. But they didn't expect to run into those two. Chu Luiyue froze. Qi Han and the others haven't seen Jiu Long and Old Six. How would they know who they are? Sun Yi explained. They haven't seen those two, but they know that you're in the Illusion God Palace and know a thing or two about this place. Besides, those two are above the God level. Even if they don't know who they are, once they use their strength, it's hard to imagine. That's true. This made sense. Rong Xiu's eyes fell on Chu Luiyue. What's your plan, hey? Chu Luiyue was silent for a long time before she finally took a deep breath. To the god-slaying tomb. To go to the god-slaying tomb, they had to leave the heavenly gate. Not to mention Jin Yunlai, even Chu Luiyue felt that this trip was too troublesome. But they still had to go. For the sake of convenience, this time, Chu Luiyue and Rong Xiu went together, and no one else was brought. When the two of them arrived at the gate of heaven, there was no one there. In fact, most of the time, this place was empty. Who would come to the heavenly gates to play? Wasn't that just looking for trouble for himself? Last time, it was because of Nan Jinshu's incident that caused such a huge commotion. However, now that Nan Jinshu had returned to the palace of the illusory god and was staying there obediently, there was no need to mention the others. Looking at the barrier in front of him, Chu Luiyue didn't hesitate. He raised his hand and pressed it. Buzz, a ripple spread out. Chu Luiyue turned around and looked at Rong Xiu. The seventh divine envoy is in charge of the gate of heaven. If there is any movement here, he will immediately rush over. You didn't see him last time, so you can meet him this time. Rong Xiu smiled. Sure. The palace of the illusory god. Jin Yunlai sensed the familiar aura at the gate of heaven. His forehead twitched violently, and with a crack, he broke the brush in his hand. It's her again. This Chu Luiyue, is there no end to it? Last time, he said he was going to invite the weapon refining saint. Last time, he said he was going to see Nan Jinshu. What is it this time? Jin Yunlai didn't want to pay attention to him, but the gate of heaven was constantly moving. Chu Luiyue was determined to go out. After a while, Jin Yunlai finally couldn't help but stand up. However, before he could walk out, a voice suddenly came from afar. Jin Yunlai. Jin Yunlai was shocked when he heard the voice. The first divine envoy? Then, an illusory figure gradually appeared in front of him. However, the figure was shrouded in a layer of faint light, making it difficult to see his facial features. He could only barely make out a silhouette. Even so, Jin Yunlai recognized at a glance that it was indeed the first divine envoy. He took a quick glance and immediately looked away. He bowed his head and said respectfully, "Greetings, first divine envoy. May I know why the first divine envoy is here today?" Due to nervousness, Jin Yunlai's body was a little stiff. Ever since the first divine envoy went into seclusion, he had never stepped out of the courtyard. Although he did not appear with his true body and was only a strand of his aura, this was the first time he had done so. "Don't you know why I'm here?" The voice was low and indifferent, but it carried an invisible pressure. Jin Yunlai's chest tightened. He frowned and quickly searched his mind. Recently, he didn't seem to have done anything. Why did the first divine envoy sound like he was scolding him? Please enlighten me, first divine envoy. Buzz. There was movement at the gate of heaven again. Jin Yunlai subconsciously turned his head to look. The first divine envoy had already made his move. A red stream of light flew out quickly and went straight to the gate of heaven. Jin Yunlai was shocked. The first divine envoy made his move personally? The Xian formations on the star passage can only be comprehended by oneself. Otherwise, it will be regarded as cheating. Then Mu Yafeng, what's going on? Do you want me to continue asking? Jin Yunlai's heart sank. The crimson streak of light flashed through the air at high speed. It arrived at the gate of heaven in the blink of an eye. Chu Luiwei heard the movement and looked up. He felt a little strange. This is the first divine envoy's aura? Noticing this, a look of shock flashed across her eyes. Then, the red stream of light landed on the barrier. The enchantment quietly opened. Chu Luiwei was stunned. After waiting for a while, Jin Yunlai didn't arrive. Instead, the first divine envoy made his move? What does he mean by this? Chu Luiwei couldn't figure it out for a moment. Warning? Reprimand? Rong Xiu smiled faintly. Maybe the seventh divine envoy is busy. Digression? Very good. Someone in the comments section guessed part of the truth. 6 o'clock. Chapter 23:20. When Jin Yunlai did not show up, Chu Luiwei did not pay much attention to it. However, when the first god emissary suddenly made a move, she was very surprised. Could it be that he finally decided to come out of seclusion? But something like opening the gate of heaven, it seemed that no matter what, it was not his turn to do it. Rong Xiu held her hand. There's no time to lose. Chu Luiwei retracted her gaze and gently nodded. The two figures quickly disappeared outside the gate of heaven. After a while, the barrier reassembled and was very calm. Chu Luiwei's departure did not attract the attention of the people in the illusory god palace. On one hand, many people's attention was on Mu Yafeng. On the other hand, the movement in the gate of heaven was too small. From the beginning to the end, only a short period of time had passed. Only the divine envoys who were guarding the various locations raised their heads in astonishment when they sensed this fluctuation. The first god emissary made a move. More importantly, he seemed to be at Jin Yunlai's residence. In an instant, several god emissaries immediately moved out and headed towards Jin Yunlai's direction. The first god emissary had been in seclusion for several years. Now that he finally made a move, they naturally had to go and check it out. Illusory God Palace. There was dead silence in the huge room. Jin Yunlai stood there with her fists clenched. Most of her strength seemed to have been sucked out of her body. Even opening her mouth to speak was difficult. Her face was pale and her lips trembled slightly. She felt as if she had fallen into an ice cave. Every word of the first god emissary's questioning was heavy and cold. After a long time, she finally found her voice. I just gave her a little reminder. A little reminder? The first god emissary asked. Jin Yunlai closed her eyes and finally said dejectedly, "Yes. I intentionally helped her. The gate of heaven will only open for a year. If she is unable to comprehend all the Xian formations on the star path before the deadline and enter the illusory God Palace to ascend to the heavens, then she will have to wait for another 10,000 years. A few months have already passed and she is still trapped in those Xian formations. I just feel that her talent is not bad. It is a pity to wait so long. Who in the illusory God Palace didn't wait like this?" The first oracle let out a rare laugh as if he had heard a joke. "Xiao Ran has already been stuck in the last few profound formations for 30,000 years, but I don't see you helping him." Jin Yunlai could hear the dissatisfaction in the first oracle's words. Xiao Ran was Xiao Ran after all, and Mu Yafeng was different. First divine envoy, ever since I took control of the star path, no one has successfully walked through the star path and entered the illusory shrine. This period of time was truly too long. Many mystic cultivators had already lost their confidence, and fewer people were even trying. If this continues, that's because they don't have the qualifications to enter the illusory God Palace. Back then, didn't you successfully complete the star path and even become the 7th divine envoy? Jin Yunlai looked troubled. But back then, it was because Jin Yunlai felt a chill in her heart when she sensed a cold gaze on her. She immediately swallowed the rest of her words. After a long while, he said, "This is Yunlai's fault. Yunlai will accept any punishment given by the first oracle. But there are some things that I have to say. Mu Yafeng is the most talented mystic cultivator in the illusory God Palace in the past 10,000 years. If even she can't do it, then there's no need to talk about the others. If I have to choose to help someone ascend to the heavens and become a god, I will still choose her. You also understand the situation of the profound formations on the star path. The further you go, the more difficult it is. If you don't have enough talent and strength, even if someone gives you pointers, it's still useless. I admit that I helped Mu Yafeng, but she was able to succeed because of her own reasons. Besides, strictly speaking, I did give her some pointers, which may not even be as detailed as the annotations on the mythical flame diagram. If Shengguan Yu can read the mythical flame diagram, why can't Mu Yafeng? In the beginning, he actually didn't have this idea. On one hand, it was because he thought highly of Mu Yafeng and always felt that these problems weren't difficult for her. On the other hand, he didn't have such plans before. But as time passed, the development of the situation gradually deviated from his expectations. On Mu Yafeng's side, she was unable to crack the profound formation and was trapped in one place for a long time without any intention of continuing. On the other hand, Chu Luiyue continuously advanced with the help of the mythical flame diagram and successfully stepped into the area of the Grandmaster's profound formation. If this continued, Chu Luiyue might really surpass Mu Yafeng. That wasn't the result that Jin Yunlai wanted to see. Because she didn't have a bloodline totem, Jin Yunlai was biased against Chu Luiyue from the beginning and always felt that she would leave the illusory God Palace soon. Who knew that not only did she not leave, but she also caused a lot of trouble and became the focus of the illusory God Palace. If she really took the lead, not only would Mu Yafeng be unhappy, but Jin Yunlai would also feel like she was slapped in the face. Even if Chu Luiyue couldn't ascend to the heavens and become a god, as long as she performed better than Mu Yafeng, it was inevitable that everyone would talk about her. And Jin Yunlai, who was in charge of the star path, would naturally be implicated. What would happen in the end? Everyone would see that Mu Yafeng, who he had always thought highly of, was actually not that outstanding at all. Instead, it was Chu Luiyue, who had been despised and ridiculed from the beginning, who easily crushed her in all aspects. Thinking of this scene, Jin Yunlai felt that it was hard to accept. So when Mu Yafeng came to beg him, he thought about it again and agreed. And her performance did not disappoint him. He thought that everything would go smoothly, but who knew that this matter would alarm the first divine emissary? The first divine emissary listened quietly for a long time before asking, "Are you done?" Jin Yunlai let out a long breath. "I'm done. It seems that you still think that you did nothing wrong." The first divine emissary's voice was faint with a trace of indifference. Jin Yunlai, I always thought that you were very smart, but now it seems that you are ridiculously stupid. Until now, can't you see that Zhen Bao Pavilion took the initiative to give the mythical flame diagram to Shangguanyu? Jin Yunlai was shocked and suddenly looked up. What? Zhen Bao Pavilion giving it to Shangguanyu and you helping Mu Yafeng don't seem to be the same nature, right? Chapter 23-21. Jin Yunlai stood there in a daze for a long time. His mind was in a mess, and his whole body was in a mess. Zhen Bao Pavilion took the initiative to give it to her? Didn't this mean that? He suddenly thought of something and sucked in a breath of cold air. A look of horror flashed across his eyes. First Oracle, only now did he realize what he had done wrong. Now, he had no time to think about why Zhen Bao Pavilion did this. He only knew that this time, if he was not careful, he would lose himself. I'll go and take back the Xian formation diagrams that I gave to Mu Yafeng. The first oracle suddenly asked. You gave her the method to break all the Xian formations? Jin Yunlai swallowed his saliva with difficulty, but his throat was still tight. In the eyes of the first oracle, this reaction naturally meant that he admitted it. That's right. Since you've made up your mind to help, of course, you have to help until the end. The first oracle's voice was emotionless. This made Jin Yunlai even more flustered. Just as well. Open your eyes wide and take a good look. See if Mu Yafeng can ascend to the heavens and become a god with your help. Jin Yunlai felt suffocated and uncomfortable. He wanted to defend himself, but he couldn't say a word. Knock knock. Suddenly, there was a knock on the door. First oracle, are you there? This was Shu Jing's voice. She did not go to Herb Mountain today, so when she heard the commotion, she hurried over. She was the first to arrive. Jin Yunlai was about to speak when he saw the phantom in front of him suddenly disappear. He wanted to ask her to stay, but she had already disappeared. It was just the aura of the first oracle. He could come and go as he pleased. He took a deep breath and rubbed his face hard. After being the seventh oracle for so many years, he had always been cautious. This time, he was impulsive and went easy on Mu Yafeng. He did not expect that he would be caught red-handed by the first oracle. Although the first oracle did not give him any substantial punishment, this made him even more nervous. He really could not understand what that person was thinking. Was he planning to come out of seclusion? If that was the case, there was nothing wrong with it. But the crux of the matter was, with so many things happening in the illusory god palace recently, why did that person target him? Helping Mu Yafeng cheat was neither a big deal nor a small matter. No matter what, it couldn't be more important than the Lightning Pond and Fengming Mountain, right? First oracle? Shu Jing waited for a while, but he still didn't hear any movement inside, so he shouted again. Creak. The door was opened. Jin Yunlai appeared behind the door. When Shu Jing saw him, he subconsciously looked inside. The first oracle has already left. Jin Yunlai said coldly. That person really came? Shu Jing looked shocked. He's willing to come out of seclusion? That's not right. Why is he looking for you the moment he comes out? Jin Yunlai didn't want to talk too much with her, so she just said perfunctorily, the first divine emissary did not come personally. He only sent a wisp of his aura to ask me some questions. Shu Jing's expression softened a little, but he still felt quite surprised. What's the matter that actually alarmed the first oracle? Jin Yunlai glanced at her. You came here to ask about this? Then you can leave. After saying that, he closed the door again. Bang. Shu Jing didn't expect his actions to be so swift and straightforward. She was so shocked that she took half a step back. When she came back to her senses, she was immediately angry. Didn't she come to ask because she was too surprised that the first oracle had come out of seclusion? What kind of attitude was this? If it weren't for the fact that Jin Yunlai's status was slightly higher than hers, she would definitely not let it go so easily. Shu Jing tidied her clothes and turned to leave. After taking a few steps, she suddenly thought of something and turned back to look at the tightly shut door. Just now, Jin Yunlai's expression was particularly ugly. Did something happen between him and the first oracle? She thought for a moment and raised her voice. Seventh oracle, I heard that Mu Yafeng has already cracked 6 great Grandmaster Xian formations in a row. Aren't you going to take a look? Bang! Jin Yunlai suddenly smashed something. Xu Jing's heart skipped a beat. What was wrong with him? Wasn't Mu Yafeng someone he particularly valued? Now that she had an outstanding performance, why was he still so angry? Xu Jing had a bad feeling. She gritted her teeth and finally turned to leave. After that, a few more oracles came to find out what was going on, but they were all sent away by Jin Yunlai with a few words. When Chu Luiwei and Rong Xiu left the illusory god palace and crossed the blue and black sea, she deliberately slowed down. Unfortunately, nothing out of the ordinary happened. After that, the two quickly rushed to the god-slaying mound. Because it wasn't their first time there, and because their strength had improved greatly, it only took them a short time to get there. At noon the next day, the two successfully arrived again. After passing through the forest, they officially entered the god-slaying mound. Looking from afar, it was vast and barren, bleak and cold. It was no different from before. It was just that the inexplicable coldness and pressure seemed to be stronger than before. There was a faint smell of blood in the air. Chu Luiwei frowned slightly. It had been a long time since they had been here, and the god-slaying mound seemed to have some subtle changes. They should already be inside. Rong Xiu looked into the distance and narrowed his eyes. Chu Luiwei nodded. Then, the two walked forward hand in hand. At this time, deep in the god-slaying mound, Qi Han was holding a long sword and staring at the two in front of him vigilantly. Behind him sat a young man covered in blood. It was Lu Feng. Jiulong laughed. You want to enter here with just the two of you? Chapter 23-22. In front of them was a large area of broken tombstones. A desolate and sorrowful aura slowly spread out. This was the tomb of the honored god. Qi Han and Lu Feng had been in the god-slaying mound for some time. They had spent a lot of time and effort to get here. They did not expect Jiulong and Shiyen to arrive at this time. As soon as they arrived, they ordered everyone to leave without hesitation. Most of the cultivators in the god-slaying mound had been forced to leave. Of course, not everyone was willing to do so. However, these two were too powerful. Even honored gods could not last more than 3 moves against them. Everyone had no choice but to obey. Jiulong and Shiyen had entered from the edge of the god-slaying mound, so they were the last to arrive here. They met Qi Han and Lu Feng, who were waiting outside the tomb. The aura of the tomb of the honored god had changed slightly with the passage of time. To ensure their safety, the two decided to wait here until the aura was at its weakest before going in. When Jiulong and Shiyen arrived, Qi Han and Lu Feng had already waited here for 3 days. As expected, they were also chased away. But they did not agree. After a short stalemate, Jiulong and Lu Feng attacked. After a few rounds, Lu Feng was injured and defeated. Qi Han held his sword in front of Lu Feng to guard against Jiulong's next move. Of course, Jiulong didn't take his actions seriously at all. They were just 2 exalted gods. What was there to care about? Jiulong looked down at the 2 of them. My patience is limited. I can't be bothered to continue arguing with you. I'll count to 3. If you don't leave by then, don't blame me for being merciless. Qi Han said coldly. The god-slaying mound is not anyone's private territory. Every cultivator in the world comes here. You want everyone to leave? That's too unreasonable. 1. Jiulong raised one finger. Obviously, he did not care about Qi Han and Lu Feng. He could not be bothered to continue arguing with them. After all, he had already given them the warning he needed. If they insisted on not listening, there was nothing he could do. Lu Feng coughed and slowly wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth. He twitched his lips without a smile. Qi Han, there's no need to say so much to them. If they were reasonable, they would not do such a thing. Shiyen glanced at the 2 of them and said slowly, that's right. Reason? Don't you know that in this world, strength is the only thing that matters? 2. Jiu Long raised her eyebrows. These two people were really not afraid of death. Unfortunately, perseverance without strength was ignorant stubbornness. Not only was it meaningless, it would even bring him a lot of trouble. The first messenger only said that the two of them were to come and find the last piece of music, but he did not say where it was. The god-slaying tomb was huge. Even if the two of them worked together, it would still take a lot of effort to find it. Because they were worried that someone would find the music score before them, the first thing they did when they arrived was to drive everyone out. Better to be safe than sorry. Although this would be troublesome, it would avoid some risks. Overall, it was worth it. Most of the people he had met before were quite obedient, or rather, sensible. After seeing that Jiu Long and Xian's strength far exceeded theirs, they all gave up and retreated. Only these two were stubborn. 3. Jiu Long shouted the last count, shook his head, and raised his hand. It's your honor to die in my hands. He did not want to dirty his hands with the blood of the exalted gods. Unfortunately, these two were not smart enough. Vigorous divine power quickly gathered in Jiu Long's palm and transformed into a long sword. The long sword was bright and sharp, and it was covered with a thin layer of frost. Under the sunlight, it shone with a cold light. Then he raised the sword and slashed down. The sword fell silently, but wherever it passed, space was quickly cut open and then collapsed. Large swathes of black spatial cracks appeared, and violent energy surged out from them. Qi Han gripped his sword even tighter. Just as he was about to attack, he realized that he could not move at all. The powerful aura suddenly descended, and he could not retaliate at all. Jiu Long's sword fell from the sky and was about to kill Qi Han and Lu Feng. A bloody wound suddenly appeared between Qi Han's eyebrows. That was an extremely sharp sword energy, and it easily broke through his defense. Jiu Long's eyes were indifferent. Die! That sword flew toward Qi Han at an even faster speed. However, right at this moment, a sharp sound of air being torn apart suddenly came from afar. Swoosh! Then, a bright golden and greenish-black sword light flew from the sky, piercing through the clouds and wind. Clang, swish! That sword light and Jiu Long's long sword collided, and then quickly flew up and slashed across. In an instant, sparks flew everywhere. Jiu Long's sword was sent flying just like that. Seeing this, Jiu Long was shocked and immediately raised his hand to call back his sword. The sword landed in his palm and was still trembling violently. It could be seen how powerful that blow was. He frowned and looked over. That was an extremely sharp long sword. Half golden, half greenish-black, neatly and perfectly blended together, and the glow was bright and heavy. This was, just as Jiu Long and Xian were shocked, Qi Han and Lu Feng had already sensed the extremely familiar aura on that sword. The two of them quickly looked at each other and saw the excitement in each other's eyes. Jiu Long turned his head and looked in the direction where the sword came from. He shouted in a deep voice, "Who is it?" A clear and pleasant voice drifted over with the wind. Ninth Divine Envoy, if you want to kill my people, you should at least ask for my permission first, right? Jiu Long was stunned at first, then he realized that this voice was very familiar. A name suddenly appeared in his mind. Shangguan Yu? Just as he finished speaking, a woman in a red dress appeared in a flash. Her figure was slim and graceful, and her beauty was unparalleled. Her black hair flew in the wind, and the hem of her dress danced. There was a faint smile on her face, and her starry eyes were slightly curved like the moon, as if they were filled with starlight. Jiu Long's face darkened. "It's really you!" Qi Han and Lu Feng could no longer suppress their emotions and shouted in unison. "Master!" Chu Luiwei came in front of the duo and sized them up. She only relaxed when she saw that their injuries weren't particularly serious. She smiled and said, "Don't worry. Fortunately, we're not too late." Jiu Long frowned and stared at the few people in front of him. "The two of them are your subordinates." Chu Luiwei turned around and tucked her hair behind her ear. She raised her finger and the Star Spectre sword returned to her hand. She smiled. Chapter 23:23. Jiu Long looked at the woman in front of him in shock. He had only used 30% of his strength in that attack, but it wasn't something an ordinary cultivator could withstand. And yet, Chu Luiwei had blocked it so easily. He had heard this name a few times recently. After all, she had caused quite a commotion in the Illusion God Palace. But it wasn't until today that Jiu Long realized that her strength was indeed far beyond that of an ordinary god. You came out of the Heaven Gate? Jiu Long asked. Chu Luiwei smiled and nodded. It's not the first time I've come out. Ninth Divine Envoy, why are you so surprised? Jiu Long choked. He just felt that it was too ridiculous. Most of the cultivators in the Illusion God Palace would never step out of the Heaven Gate, let alone come to the world of divine ruins. And those who came from the world of divine ruins were proud to be able to enter the Illusion God Palace. They didn't want to leave. There were very few people like Chu Luiwei who kept going in and out of the house. Her frequency was even higher than that of the divine envoys. Wasn't the seventh divine envoy in charge of guarding the Heaven Gate? Why did they let her come out again and again? More importantly, she didn't have a bloodline totem. Wasn't that even more ridiculous? Jiu Long stared at her vigilantly. What are you doing here? Even if she left the Illusion God Palace, there were many places she could go. Why did she choose the god-slaying tomb? It was related to the last zither score, so Jiu Long couldn't help but feel suspicious. Chu Luiwei blinked. My two subordinates are here. What's so strange about me coming here? But the two divine envoys, why did you suddenly leave the Illusion God Palace and come here and drive everyone else away? What are you doing? Jiu Long's expression was cold. That's not something you have the right to ask. Chu Luiwei said, Oh. It seems that the two divine envoys don't want to reveal. Then forget it. As she spoke, she raised her head towards Qi Han and Lu Feng behind her. Let's go. She was about to go to the tombs. Jiu Long never thought that Chu Luiwei would actually walk in without a second word. He didn't even put them in his eyes. Chu Luiwei stopped in his tracks and turned his head to ask, What's wrong? Is there anything else? Jiu Long gritted her teeth. It seems like you've turned a deaf ear to what we've said before? Chu Luiwei asked. Words? What words? Jiu Long felt stifled in his chest. Qi Han explained. Master, they have already chased away all the cultivators here. If you hadn't come in time, I'm afraid we would have already. Chu Luiwei raised his eyebrows. Oh, about that? She was wondering why she hadn't seen anyone along the way. It turned out that Jiu Long and Xian had chased them away. In that case, it was even more obvious what they wanted to do. Chu Luiwei tilted his head and looked at Jiu Long and Xian. That's really unfortunate. I've come this time because I have something important to do, so I won't be able to leave for the time being. I hope the two divine envoys will forgive me. Although she said so, her expression and tone were extremely natural. There wasn't the slightest hint of apology in them. Clearly, she wasn't asking for help. She was just informing them of her choice and decision. She was going to stay here. Xian frowned and said coldly, Shangguanyu, you've done so many outrageous things in the Illusion God Palace. For Dumpling's sake, the divine envoys didn't pursue the matter. But that doesn't mean you can do whatever you want. If you don't listen to our advice, don't blame us for being impolite. Chu Luiwei's lips curved into a faint smile. Forgive me for being blunt, but I don't think the divine envoys have done anything extra for me. Why do you look like you've given me a lot of things? Shi Yan felt even more annoyed. In the Illusion God Palace, the divine envoys were revered. No matter what they said or did, their subordinates would do as they were told. Very few would object, and even fewer would dare to talk back to them. But now, Chu Luiwei had done all of this, and she didn't seem afraid at all. Who gave her the confidence? Shangguanyu, are you sure you want to continue being so impudent? Jiu Long raised his sword and pointed it at her. No matter how powerful your eminence is, she's still your eminence. If he used his full strength, Chu Luiwei wouldn't be able to retaliate at all. Chu Luiwei blinked and smiled in the face of the cold sword light. Divine envoys, if I'm not wrong, the two of you are also here for that last zither score, right? Since everyone has the same goal, Why don't we work together and find it first? We can talk about the rest later. These words caused Jiulong and Xian's expressions to change. This was something that the first divine messenger had specifically instructed the two of them. How did she know about it? Seeing the duo's reaction, Chu Luiyue also found it interesting. She glanced at the two of them, then slowly asked, "You've come here to find the zither scores. The two of you have already come here to look for the zither score. Don't tell me that you still don't know. The two zither scores from before have already recognized me as their master?" "What did you say?" Jiulong and Xian both exclaimed in shock. Chu Luiyue shrugged. It seemed that they really didn't know. Since the first divine envoy gave you this task, why didn't he tell you about it? Not many people knew that she was the master of the zither scores, but Nanjin Shu was one of them. He had chosen to tell the first divine envoy the location of the last score, so there was no reason for him not to tell her. Besides, someone like the first divine envoy should know this like the back of his hand. Otherwise, how could he be qualified to be called the first divine envoy and be in charge of the entire illusion god palace? But the strange thing was, these two didn't know. Jiulong was about to attack. Chu Luiyue calmly raised her hand. "Wait, ninth divine envoy, I've already said that the two zither scores are with me, and they already belong to me. If you kill me now, you won't get a single one." Once she died, the two zither scores would be scattered and hidden away again, and they would never be found again. Unless there was something wrong with their heads, Jiulong and Xian would never touch her. This was also why Chu Luiyue dared to be so frank. Since she couldn't hide it, she might as well be frank. "You dare threaten us?" Jiulong gritted her teeth. Chu Luiyue sighed helplessly. "I've already made it so obvious, but you two only realized it now?" She had always been a straightforward person. If she wanted to threaten someone, she would do it openly and openly. The first two zither scores were with her. If they had the ability, they would have to fight for it. She wasn't afraid of death, but she didn't know if the illusion god palace would be afraid of getting nothing in the end. You're tuning in to the Wang Lin's Journey YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.